got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. I got killer beats, got war and peace inside my DNA. I got poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA.
I will be headed home for a while, on a temporary leave. Kyojuro said. Father said he wished to expand on and perfect my training whilst I finished the last stages of my recovery, he added with a hopeful smile. I take it Senjiro chose to politely decline. Nezuko guessed. Yes. He said he was quite happy here. Kyojuro replied. I will see you when I return, or when you visit. Until then, stay safe, and make sure you listen well to whatever wisdom the other Hashira have to offer. Nezuko nodded, and her mentor departed from the butterfly mansion. Nezuko smiled at the sky, then turned around to return to her room. She was looking forward to a nap. A few days later, Nezuko had just finished donning her uniform when she heard screaming outside. She raced out to the courtyard, following the voices to the front gate. She peeked around the corner to see Sumi and Kiyo swarming the accessorized Hashira. Kaneo held on to Aoi and Naho like her life depended on it. What's going on? Nezuko wondered while the Hashira turned to her fellow demon slayer. What was his name, again? She could have sworn someone mentioned it at some point. If you're gonna be unflashy, then say something, the man yelled. Nezuko bolted to the path, skidding to a halt. What on earth do you think you're doing to those girls? She demanded. He's kidnapping Naho and Miss Aoi. Kiyo declared, getting snatched off the man's shoulder. Shut your mouth, he snapped, eliciting a shriek from Kiyo. Nezuko rolled her eyes before running at the man, raising her leg for a kick to his knee. However, her leg swept through empty air. Kaneo, Kiyo, and Sumi quickly started to fall without the Hashira to grab onto. Nezuko scrambled to catch Kiyo, since she was closest, while Kaneo and Sumi landed on the path. Are you all okay? She asked, turning to the gate to find the Hashira knelt on the archway. Did you really think I'd fall for such a simple move? The man asked incredulously. I'm Lord Yuzui Tengen, a former shinobi. A man known around here for his resplendency. So that was his name. Nezuko was pretty sure Kyojuro mentioned the guy at some point. You have no right to take those girls. Nezuko snapped, straightening up and glaring at Yuzui. Yeah, what she said. Kiyo yelped. Release them right now, you lousy kidnapper. Nezuko added. Pervert. Pervert. Sumi declared. Who do you think you're talking to? Yuzui screamed. Show some respect. I'm your superior. I'm a Hashira, DMN it. And why should I acknowledge you as a Hashira when you're acting like an insecure child? Nezuko demanded, crossing her arms over her chest. Now release Naho and Miss Aoi this instant, or we will inform Miss Shinobu when she returns that you kidnapped 2 of her medical assistants and refused to tell us why. Why should I care if you don't acknowledge me, you bottom feeder? Did your brain fall out of your head or what? Yuzui replied. Growling came from the box on Nezuko's back. Great. Now Tanjiro was offended. Stay in there, Tanjiro. Nezuko whispered, not taking her eyes off Yuzui for a second. I need female core members for a mission. And I don't need permission to take anyone who's not a Tsuguko. Yuzui informed them. Naho isn't even a member of the core. Sumi protested. Look, she's not wearing the uniform. Yuzui lifted up Naho, as if just realizing she didn't have a demon slayer uniform under her medical uniform. Did he not realize that? Never mind, he deadpanned, tossing Naho. Nezuko caught her, getting the younger girl back on her feet while a new set of footsteps came into the courtyard. What's going on out here? Senjiro asked as he ran into the courtyard. Ah! If it isn't Rengoku's little brother. Good to see ya, Senjiro. Yuzui exclaimed. Senjiro turned his gaze to the man, his eyes widening when he saw Aoi. Mr. Yuzui? What are you doing with Miss Aoi? Apparently he needs female corps members for a mission. Nezuko muttered. Clearly, he didn't think to ask for help before resorting to kidnapping, she added, staring directly at the man she was referring to. Shut up, brat. This is important. Yuzui yelled. So I'll be taking this girl. I don't know how someone as weak as her made it past final selection, but she's still a member of the corps. I'll go. Nezuko countered, clenching her fists at her sides. Take me in place of Miss Aoi. She's needed here as a medic. So take me on your mission instead of her. And I can only go on missions supervised by a Hashira, anyway, so it's a win-win. And take us, too, another voice declared before two familiar figures jumped to her sides. Inosuke and Zenitsu, though the latter was trembling quite a bit. Why you let Miss Aoi go? You hear me? Zenitsu added. Alright, fine. Yuzui replied. Nezuko couldn't help but be taken aback. Was it really that easy? I'll let you go in place of this girl. If you obey my every command. He raised his hand. Slap her, especially where I think you're planning to, and I leave a note about it for Miss Shinobu. Nezuko declared. She already intended to leave a message for the insect Hashira about the kidnapping, but she wasn't above further blackmail. Yuzui's hand stalled right over Aoi's behind, and he raised a brow. We understand the consequences if we don't follow your orders. You don't need to demonstrate. Fine. Yuzui sighed, jumping off the archway and releasing Aoi once he landed. Meet me outside. Are you sure about this, Nezuko? Senjiro asked while the girls fussed over Aoi. Nezuko smiled in a way she hoped would reassure him. I'll be fine, she told him. We'll go, handle the demon, and be back before you know it. Nothing I haven't done before, she added before hugging the youngest Rengoku. You keep working, and don't worry about me. Your help is needed here. Stay safe. Senjiro mumbled as he returned the hug. The two separated, and Nezuko made her way back to Inosuke and Zenitsu. They made their way out of the gate to meet Yuzui. So what's this mission? Inosuke asked. We're going to the Yoshiwara Entertainment District. Yuzui answered. Zenitsu immediately began blushing and babbling. What has gotten into you? Nezuko asked quietly. Zenitsu turned to her with wide eyes and a face as red as a tomato. Nezuko. Why you see, Zenitsu mumbled, ruffling his hair. An entertainment district is. It has a lot of, he waved his hand up and down in front of her. And they do. They do a lot of. Out with it, Agatsuma. Nezuko told him firmly. An entertainment district is full of appealing women, and the people there pay to hang out with them and sometimes do more. Zenitsu said rapidly. Nezuko glanced at the ground as she took a second to process it, then whipped back to Zenitsu so fast she felt her neck crack. Are you talking about? No. I don't want you to speak of it. Zenitsu screamed, slapping his hand over her mouth. It's nothing someone of your age should be worried about. Nezuko glared at him before biting his hand. Zenitsu yelped, snatching his hand away. I know what SEC is, Zenitsu, I'm the second oldest of 6 kids, she snapped. Zenitsu froze. Had she not told them? Or did he just think she was oblivious? Listen up, the man yelled, doing an odd series of poses once he got everyone's attention. I am a god. You 3 are trash, he declared. Nezuko tried not to let her unimpressed glare be too obvious. That's the first bit of info you need to pound into your heads. So drill it in. You turn into dogs if I tell you. You turn into monkeys if I tell you. Every waking moment must be spent worshipping me and pandering to my every whim. Wow, is this guy full of it? Nezuko thought. And remember above all else. I am a god. Yuzui finished, turning his gaze directly to Nezuko. Speechless? Overwhelmed by my flashiness, he asked with a smug grin. Overwhelmed by your god complex. Nezuko replied with her own smirk. Zenitsu squeaked and Inosuke grunted beside her. Yuzui's eyes widened, and his smile dropped. Well, you've certainly got quite the attitude, he muttered. Nezuko shrugged in response, and Yuzui turned around. Well. No more time to waste. Follow me, he said before speeding off. As they arrived in Yoshiwara, Nezuko couldn't keep herself from gaping. It reminded her of Asakusa with how bright it was at night. The streets were full of life, people bustling about the streets and calling down from the building's balconies. All right, everyone. Stay in this carriage, and don't draw attention. Yuzui told them. Inosuke quickly sped off, yelling something about being overwhelmed. Zenitsu jumped out of the carriage shortly after, his hands pressed to his ears. You guys! Nezuko exclaimed, just missing the chance to grab them. Yuzui sighed, dragging a hand down his face, and Nezuko stood to hop out of the carriage. I'll go get them. Nope. You stay right where you are, young lady. Yuzui protested as he stepped out. Until you're properly set up for the mission, this is no place for a girl your age to be wandering the streets. Least of all on her own, he added, pushing Nezuko back into her seat. Stay here, and don't speak to anyone. One wrong action could get you in some serious trouble. Got it. Nezuko replied, leaning back while Yuzui went after the boys. She only caught his mumbling about rowdy kids before letting herself zone out. Hey! God damn it! 1 minute of peace and quiet. Just one. Is that too much to ask? Nezuko thought, trying not to make her displeasure too obvious. She glanced toward the voice, finding a man approaching the carriage. He was obviously drunk, considering his flushed face and the way he seemed to stumble a little every few steps. Nezuko slowly reached for Tanjiro's box as the man continued to approach her. What's a pretty thing like you doing out here on your own? The man asked, his speech slurring slightly. If Nezuko didn't already know he was drunk, that gave it away immediately. Nezuko looked away, hoping the guy would back off. What, do you think you're too good for me? Come on, just name your price. Nezuko slowly scooted away while the guy began reaching for her closest arm. Don't be shy. I can. Hey. Nezuko whipped around to find Yuzui, carrying Zenitsu and Inosuke on his shoulder. Back off, she's my charge, the sound Hashira snapped. The drunk guy scoffed, but backed off under the glare of the taller and much more muscular Yuzui. Once he was gone, Nezuko heaved a sigh of relief. Thank the gods, I was this close to kicking his face in, she hissed, pinching her fingers into a claw to emphasize her point and leaving the tips of her fingers only a hair's width apart. Yeah, this is why I wanted us all to stay together, and why I told you not to talk to anyone. Yuzui sighed as he unceremoniously tossed the boys into the carriage. I'm definitely understanding. Nezuko muttered. All right. Everyone stay put. Yuzui told them as he sat down. Nezuko quickly grabbed onto Inosuke's arm and Zenitsu's collar for good measure as the carriage began moving again. Eventually, the carriage came to a stop outside a wisteria house. They all got off the carriage, and Yuzui led them into a room. Nezuko didn't miss how he seemed to hover more around her, concealing her from view more than the boys, but decided to pay it no mind. After that drunkard, she didn't feel too comfortable in the open unsupervised. Once they were settled, Yuzui sat down in front of the trio. All right, you three, he said. Once you've infiltrated the entertainment district, you should seek out my wives. There was silence for a moment before Zenitsu began freaking out. How dare you ask something like that, he demanded, slapping the tatami mats. Why would you bring us all the way here to find a bride for you while you're doing all the hard work? Zenitsu! Nezuko exclaimed, cuffing him upside the head. He didn't say to find a bride for him. He said to find his wife. He's clearly already married. Admittedly, she'd be upset if they were brought here to find a bride for Yuzui, too. She's right, you idiot. Yuzui replied, pulling out a pile of letters and tossing them at the younger demon slayers. Here's your proof. Letters that were sent to me by Kasugai Crow. This is a lot of letters. Nezuko noted. How long has she been undercover? And how often do you touch base? Oh, I have 3 wives. Yuzui answered matter-of-factly. Did Rengoku not mention that? I thought he would have told you about that. If he did, I don't remember the information. Nezuko admitted. Yuzui rolled his eyes, muttering something Nezuko didn't quite catch. How did this guy end up with 3 wives? Zenitsu asked quietly, getting a warning glare from the sound Hashira as the older man's fist clenched. Anyways. Yuzui grumbled. Recently, there've been a suspicious string of disappearances in the area. I tried to get info, but I couldn't learn much without garnering suspicion. My wives have infiltrated the entertainment district, getting closer than a customer ever could. Joining the houses as workers. Nezuko guessed. Considering what she'd learned so far, that was the only probable explanation. Yes. Yuzui replied. Each of my wives are shinobi known as kunoichi. They have plenty of training, and stealth and infiltration are their specialties. However, they've all missed their check-ins recently. So I'm sending you 3 into the houses they infiltrated to find them. They're probably all dead if they stopped sending you messages. Inosuke suggested, getting a punch to his gut in response. Nezuko stared at the boar-wearing boy, eyeing the large bruise forming on Inosuke's abdomen. That was probably gonna be there for a while. One of the wisteria house attendants dropped off supplies, and Nezuko turned back to Yuzui. You were panicking, she said, getting the man's attention while Zenitsu began going through the new supplies and Inosuke continued to recover from the punch to his gut. I'm an ex-shinobi in a Hashira, kid. Neither of those are occupations where panic is an option. Yuzui countered sternly. But you're also married to those women you're asking us to find. Nezuko replied, examining the letters. You're worried for your wives' safety. You're worried something happened to them, and you want to find them as fast as possible to be sure they're all safe. Yuzui stared at her for a moment, his eyes wide before his expression relaxed a little. I understand what Rengoku means. You're perceptive, kid. Yuzui chuckled. It's a gift. Nezuko told him with a faint smile. So. What do you need us to do? Well, I'll need to sell you 3 to the houses my wives infiltrated. Yuzui answered. The women you're looking for are Suma of Takedo House, Makio of Ajimoto House, and Hinatsuru of Kayagaku House. But first, we need to get those 2 looking convincingly like girls. That's why I wanted female core members, but I'll work with what I got. Nezuko turned to the boys in question, still recovering from the punches. Yeah, we probably have our work cut out for us. She thought before turning back to Yuzui. Well, what are we waiting for? Inosuke, hold still. No, I don't like it. You don't even need that much. The only giveaways are your physique and having AD-, both of which are easy to cover. Now let me do this. No. Beat me in a fight to let you cover my face in that. Nezuko sighed. Inosuke was proving difficult. At least his face didn't need much work. Didn't make wrestling him to apply what little makeup he did need any easier. Nezuko rolled her eyes, lowering the makeup and brush. Alright, she muttered before tackling Inosuke with a battle cry. While Inosuke scrambled to fend her off, Nezuko hooked her legs around his arms. Tanjiro, get his legs! Nezuko yelled. Once Inosuke had been thoroughly restrained, she started to apply his makeup. By the time Inosuke was made up and dressed, Tanjiro was covered in bite marks from him. At least none of them broke the skin. Nezuko was just glad she still had her uniform on, and that it was made to resist teeth much sharper than Inosuke's. I'm impressed, kid. Yuzui chuckled while Inosuke seated beside them. I have the yellow kid ready, he added, gesturing behind himself. Nezuko leaned to see Zenitsu, and barely kept herself from snorting. Well, that's one way to make him look like a girl. Nezuko thought, suppressing her giggles while Yuzui passed her a kimono. You should get ready yourself. I want to be getting you 3 employed tonight, he told her. Nezuko nodded, making her way to a separate room to change. As she shed her uniform, Nezuko took a deep breath. How long had it been since she last wore a kimono? Once she had folded up her uniform, Nezuko turned to the new kimono. It was pink, like her old one, with darker pink cherry blossoms embroidered on the lower half of the main kimono and the sleeves. It was appealing. Is this the kind of kimono you would have gotten for me, Tanjirou? Nezuko asked herself, smiling solemnly as she brushed her fingers across the material. He always insisted he would buy her a appealing kimono as soon as they had the spare money to splurge on such things. Tears began to sting in her eyes, but Nezuko quickly wiped them away. She wrapped the kimono around herself, falling into the distant but familiar routine of wrapping and folding. She picked up the red obi, wrapping it around her waist and tying it into a bow before twisting around to her back. Nezuko turned to Tanjiro as he entered the room, his eyes widening when they found Nezuko. MMPH, Tanjiro knelt in front of her, gently brushing his fingers over the kimono just as Nezuko had. Then he turned to her face again, his eyes tearful as his hands came up to her cheeks. Yeah, it's really pretty, isn't it? Nezuko whispered. Don't worry. You'll get to buy me that new kimono you wanted to get. We'll make a shopping trip when you're human again. Nezuko? She looked up, spotting the silhouette at the door. Can I come in? Zenitsu asked. Yeah, I'm dressed. Nezuko replied. The door opened, and Zenitsu stepped inside before closing it again. She quickly noticed the hairpin in his hand. I found this in the box. I figured it would be easier to pin your hair up than try and pull it into a hairstyle. Zenitsu told her with a shrug, holding out the hairpin. Thanks. Nezuko sighed, smiling solemnly as she reached up and brushed her fingers on the tips of her hair. It was probably what she missed most about her long hair, getting to play around with it, and find styles to try. Nezuko, do you think my hair will be as long and pretty as yours? Hanako asked while Nezuko brushed her little sister's hair. Hanako had only started really growing her hair out the previous year, leaving it too short for much more than a ponytail or certain braids. Nezuko smiled. Of course it will, she chuckled. You just have to take really good care of it. And then can you teach me how to do it in pretty styles like you do? Hanako requested, her eyes wide in that way she did when the younger of the Kamado sisters really wanted something. Her puppy eyes. You know I will, Hanako. Nezuko answered, putting down the brush and running her fingers through Hanako's hair. And it'll be our thing. Just us sisters. Nezuko. Nezuko startled out of the memory, meeting Zenitsu's worried gaze. Are you okay? You look ready to cry. I'm fine. Nezuko whispered, wiping at her eyes. At least she didn't have makeup on. Just thinking about my little sister, and how I promised to teach her some hairstyles when her hair grew out enough. It was a little longer than mine is right now. Zenitsu smiled at that. The two demon slayers turned to Tanjiro, and he quickly latched himself onto Nezuko. Thanks, Tanjiro. Nezuko sighed, rubbing circles into his back and turning to face Zenitsu again. Would you mind giving me a hand? She asked. Zenitsu nodded, and Nezuko untied her hair ribbon. Zenitsu combed through her hair, pinning it up once he was done. You all done in here? Yuzui asked, opening the door. Hey. Knock, would ya? Zenitsu snapped, getting a nonchalant shrug and smug grin from Yuzui. It's fine, Zenitsu. Nezuko told him, turning to the sound Hashira. What did you need, Yuzui? If you're finished getting done up, you're gonna need makeup, he answered. Why do I need that? Nezuko asked, eyeing the foundation in particular. Yuzui tapped the right side of his forehead, and Nezuko's hand flew up to the same spot on her head, her fingertips meeting the rough skin of her scar. Oh, her shoulders slumped slightly. She'd completely forgotten about it. In a place that seemed to prefer beauty, given the girls she'd spotted on the balconies throughout the entertainment district, her scar would definitely draw attention. Hey! Zenitsu spoke up, tapping Nezuko's shoulder. She turned to him. You're still appealing, he whispered with a smile. Nezuko smiled back, then turned to Yuzui. Ready when you are, sir, she said, squaring her shoulders. Yuzui nodded, pulling out the makeup. After everyone was in their disguises, Yuzui led them to one of the houses he said his wives had infiltrated. As they walked through the streets of Yoshiwara, he reminded them of their aliases. Zenitsu was going by Zenko, Inosuke by Inoko, and Nezuko by Sumiko. She and Zenitsu had tried to convince Yuzui to let her use her real name, but the sound Hashira was firm on his stance. They stopped right outside one of the houses, and Yuzui called for the attention of the pair sitting on the engawa. Would you happen to be hiring? He asked, gesturing to the trio. I have 3 girls in need of jobs, if you are. Oh, my, the woman gasped. How much for that girl in the middle, she asked, causing Nezuko to straighten up more than she already had been. She was in the middle of the group. However much you're willing to pay, MDM, Yuzui chuckled in response. Sumiko, here, is quite a lovely young girl. Has a pretty good skill set, too. I'm sure she will blossom plenty under your care. Say no more, the woman exclaimed. We'll take her. The man beside her nodded, and Nezuko bowed to the two. I'll do my best to be of help, she told them with a smile. Yuzui pushed against her shoulder, and she walked into the house. As he watched Nezuko disappear, Zenitsu silently hoped she would be okay. He trusted she would handle herself if the situation called for it, of course. And if she couldn't, Tanjiro would be nearby. It wouldn't keep Zenitsu from worrying about her, though. Meanwhile, he had to put up with Yuzui and Inosuke. With a silent prayer for the well-being of his ears, he walked in line with Inosuke and the sound Hashira in search of Ajimoto House and Kayagaku House. Once they were inside, Nezuko was led into a room where 2 of the women on the staff scrubbed her face of her makeup. Are you kidding me? The woman from the entrance yelled once the makeup was wiped away. We got scammed. How are we going to market this girl when she has such a massive scar on her face? My apologies. Nezuko whispered, trying not to let herself feel self-conscious about the scar in question. This place really wasn't doing her self-esteem any favors. I didn't realize it would be such a problem. Not that I expected to be here in the first place, but I can't exactly be picky right now. I'm in a little deep for that. It's quite alright, a new voice spoke up, bringing everyone's attention to the stunning woman entering the room. She was obviously one of the Oirins that Yuzui had mentioned, carrying herself with an almost otherworldly grace and her features set into a delicate smile. I'm certain we can still find a job for you around here, the woman assured her. Until then, let's get you settled and see what you can do. Yes, ma'am. Nezuko replied enthusiastically. One of the men on the staff picked up Tanjiro's box, and the staff led the way to an empty room. Once she got settled, making sure to tell Tanjiro that she was safe as discreetly as she could, Nezuko was given a list of chores. Housework, mostly. She could do housework. Okay, let's start with dusting, she muttered, looking around in search of someone to direct her to cleaning supplies. Hopefully, cleaning would be a good cover to find clues about where Sumo was. What a steal. I can't believe I got this girl for such a low price. These ladies were weird. Plus, Inosuke's face felt wrong after being scrubbed, so he could only stare. Even without makeup, she's such a beauty. Was that the stuff Kimiko put on his face? This is weird. Inosuke thought. These ladies' words didn't make a lot of sense to him. Just you wait, the lady who brought him here declared. When I'm done with this girl, she's gonna be more popular than Warabeheim from Kyogaku House or Koinatsu from Takedo House, she added before she and her minion carried Inosuke off. Yep. This place was weird. Inosuke decided to focus on finding Makio. He could worry about the weird ladies another time. Music echoed through the halls of Kyogaku House. Zenitsu took a breath, focusing on the music. The sound of the shamisen in his hands helped block out the comments, even if only by a minuscule amount. He still couldn't believe Yuzui paid these people to take him. It was so frustrating. Focus, Zenitsu. He told himself as he continued playing. This is a cover. You need to focus and find Hinetsuru. The sooner you find that JRK's wife, the sooner this mission is over with. Done. Nezuko declared, standing as straight as possible as the chaperone examined her cleaning job. She hoped her experience cleaning her home was good enough. The woman squinted at every surface, running her fingers along dressers and door tracks. Impressive, the woman finally said. When the time comes, you could potentially find a husband to take your debt. Your house skills are certainly noteworthy. Thank you, ma'am. Nezuko replied with a nod. Is there anything else I can do? Can I get you some fresh tea, or handle any plants? Or maybe I can help the younger girls. I'm fine without fresh tea for now, dear. I have plenty, the chaperone chuckled. Though, since you're offering, I would like to see your skills in flower arranging. I must say, even without more elaborate skills, you've got quite the talent in housework, Sumiko. How on earth do you do it at such a young age? Nezuko hesitated, wondering whether to lie or tell the truth. Maybe a partial truth. Or at least nothing with specific information. I was one of the older siblings in my family, so I always helped around the house when I was old enough. She still had such fond memories of trying to help her mom with laundry when Takeo and Hanako were still babies. As much as she struggled at such a young age, it had felt good to see her mom smile whenever Nezuko presented her latest attempt at folding. Oh, that's lovely. Such dedication, the chaperone hummed with a smile. When you're done with the flowers, I actually have one more job for you. How's your sewing, Sumiko? I can sew. I've been practicing since I was a little girl. Nezuko replied. She could practically do it in her sleep, in all honesty. There was a reason she made a point of bringing her sewing kit whenever she went into town. Well, I'd like to see what you can do with a needle and thread, the older woman told her, pulling a kimono from a small pile of clothes nearby. There's a tear in this kimono. When you're done with the flowers, I want you to try and fix it. If you perform well enough, we could probably give you a job as a seamstress. It's not quite as lucrative as the work girls like Koinatsu do, but it's honest work. Of course. Nezuko replied, scooping up the kimono and gently feeling the fabric. She turned to the Takedo House chaperone, who handed her flower arranging supplies, then went to her room to get to work on her new chores. I heard Makio isn't feeling well. I tried dropping some food off outside her room, but I'm not sure she took it. I hope she feels better soon. Inosuke perked up at that name. Makio. That was the lady he was looking for. He inched closer to the corner, tray held tightly in his hands. He listened for a location, then took off in the direction the ladies mentioned. Inoko. Don't rush. You could trip and hurt yourself, one of them called out. Inosuke turned to them and bowed, walking away as they talked about how quiet he was. Not his fault that the god of festivals thought he couldn't do a girl voice. Inosuke, I think it's best we don't test how good your girl impression is in the field. Mizuko told him, giving him that smile that made his insides feel weird. Like he had to tell her she shouldn't feel bad. It reminded him of the smiles before she disappeared that one time. Fine. Inosuke relented with a grumble, patting Koyumiko's head. Like he'd seen Tanjiro do. Tsukimoko always seemed happier when Gonpakairu patted her head. Just stop making that face. Noriko replied with a giggle, and that smile that didn't look sad like before. He'd put up with it. Tsukiko may not be the lady he saw when he sometimes looked her way, but he still looked to her as a member of the pack. And what kind of boss would he be if he didn't take care of his pack? He got to the hall to Makio's room, stepping closer to the door. Makio's food the other lady left was still there. Demon. He felt the faintest hint of a demon. Inosuke rushed to Makio's room, sensing the demon's presence inside. He threw the doors open. The room was a mess, the demon clearly left in a hurry. Where the hell is it? Inosuke asked himself, his gaze drifting to the ceiling. Hey, demon, he yelled, grabbing the nearest throwable thing. A bowl of udon, which he immediately threw at the ceiling. Something rattled in the ceiling, and Inosuke gave chase. Damn it, I can't feel a thing in this stupid outfit. Inosuke thought as he loosened the stifling bit around his neck. If he could just expose some skin, he'd be able to find it more easily. Sumiko, this is wonderful, the chaperone gasped as she examined the kimono Nezuko had just repaired. Her eyes widened. You really think so, she asked. Absolutely. The chaperone gasped. Why, I can't even tell this was torn. Where did you learn to sew so exquisitely? Nezuko sat in silence for a moment, reminiscing for a brief time before replying. My family wasn't exactly wealthy, so it was easier to repair damaged clothes than buy new ones, she admitted. My mother taught me how to sew, and I did sometimes sell my work for a profit. But I've never worked on expensive fabrics like this before. She couldn't help remembering a conversation with Tanjiro as she recalled her mother's sewing lessons. You have to mend another tear. That's it. We'll get you a new kimono next time we go into town. No, no, no. Don't worry, it's fine. This is my favorite kimono. Besides, I'd much rather have money to feed our siblings. Maybe when Rokuta's a little older. Sumiko. Nezuko startled, wiping away the tears she hadn't realized had started welling up in her eyes. Sorry, she whispered. Just feeling a little nostalgic. Well, if you wouldn't mind, this kimono and the boxes outside need to be taken to Konatsu's room, the chaperone told her. Nezuko nodded, carefully taking back the kimono and placing it on top of the boxes with the utmost care. You don't need to treat it like glass, dear. Those silks are fairly strong, you only really need to worry about wrinkling or staining most times. Thank you. Nezuko replied as she picked up the boxes, carrying them to Konatsu's room. A lot of girls are committing Ashinuk lately. Nezuko opened the doors to two of the younger girls talking in hushed tones. Ashinuk, she spoke up, getting the girls' attention. What's that? She asked as she began bringing the boxes into the room. Ashinuk is when a CRTSN runs away without paying her debts. Usually to be with someone she loves, one of the girls said. It's really bad if you get caught, the other girl added. Nezuko nodded, though her mind began drifting to what Yuzui said. The recent string of disappearances in Yoshiwara. Ashinuk would be a perfect cover for a demon to avoid suspicion. No one would question the girls going missing if they sometimes run away. She thought. We were just talking about Oiran Suma, the first girl told her. She disappeared a little while ago, and they found her diary. They said whatever was inside pointed to Ashinuk. Oiran Suma. She must have been taken by the demon, then. I hope she's okay. I'd hate to have to tell Yuzui one of his wives is gone. You mustn't spread rumors, you too. Konatsu sighed as she entered the room. The younger girls clamored to her, and she slipped them some candy. Suma isn't here, so we mustn't make assumptions about what happened to her. It's suspicious, isn't it? Nezuko piped up. I've heard rumors about a lot of girls disappearing recently. Do you really think all of them committed Ashinuk? Koinatsu glanced at the door for a moment, closing it before kneeling as close as she could to the other three girls without touching anyone. Nezuko got the message. Whatever she was about to say was only for select ears. Most of them are from Kayagaku House. Koinatsu admitted softly. I can't blame them, unfortunately. I hate to point fingers, but Oiran Warabeheim isn't known for being a kind woman. They may have run to escape her cruelty. Assuming they don't choose alternative methods of escape. Like what happened to the Kayagaku House chaperone, one of the little girls piped up, turning to Nezuko. There's been rumors she threw herself out a window a couple days ago, before you arrived. Suicide? Nezuko gasped, forcing herself to ignore the faint knot in her chest. Koinatsu nodded solemnly. Unfortunately, she sighed. A few girls committed, especially in Kayagaku House. The knot loosened only slightly, but enough for Nezuko to know at least part of that statement was true. Then what about Suma? Or other girls outside of Kayagaku House? Nezuko asked, filing away the information about Kayagaku House to tell Yuzui when they met up to share their reconnaissance information. Hinetsuru was there. Maybe she had also gotten some information from the inside. Maybe one of the boys had found something, too. I can't say. Koinatsu replied. Why do you ask specifically about Suma? Nezuko tensed up at the question, rapidly running through answers that wouldn't be instant giveaways. She's my older sister, she replied, turning her gaze to the ground. Thank Hinakami I don't make that awful face Tanjiro does when he tells a lie. That'd be a dead giveaway in 2 seconds flat. Nezuko thought, setting her expression to one of worry. I see. So you were sold after your sister? Koinatsu replied. Nezuko nodded. Suma and I had been exchanging letters since she joined Takedo House, but she stopped replying a little while ago, she answered, raising her gaze again. But she wouldn't commit Ashinuk. That's not the kind of girl she is, I swear. I really hope she's okay. Please let Miss Suma be okay. For Yuzui, at the very least. That's something we can agree on. Koinatsu said with a solemn smile. She reached out to Nezuko, then placed a candy in her hands. Here. These aren't easy times, so it's important we have small things to bring us a little light. Nezuko smiled and nodded at that. Oiran. Oiran, the younger girls exclaimed. The young woman in question turned to see the girls holding up the mended kimono. Be careful with that. Koinatsu told them, though she remained calm. We wouldn't want to stain it. It just got mended. That's just it, the first girl replied excitedly, gently raising the area the tear was in. It's like it was never there. Koinatsu leaned closer to examine the sewing. This is quite expert stitching, she gasped, turning to Nezuko. Sumiko. The MDM said something about having you try some repairs, yes? Is this your handiwork? Yes, Oiran. Nezuko replied. It's my first time working with such an expensive material, but I tried my best to make it look nice. For a first-timer in terms of the fabric, it's just about perfect. Koinatsu chuckled. Thank you. You've done a wonderful job. Even if you don't take customers, you'll be able to make plenty of money, I'm sure. Thank you, Oiran. Nezuko replied with a faint smile. As she left to find the chaperone, intending to ask what else she could do, she made a mental note to let Yuzui know about the amount of disappearances in Kayagaku House. And the suspicion that it was girls committing Ashinuk and suicide because of this Oiran Warabeheim. That night, Nezuko felt a faint chill in her spine. There was a sense of danger in the air. Like something was watching her. When she looked around, however, there was no sign of anything that could feasibly attack. She couldn't deny what her instincts were telling her, though, and pulled Tanjiro's box closer to her futon. Tanjiro opened the door a crack, his eyes glowing faintly. A tiny clawed hand rested on her own hand, gently squeezing her fingers. His message was unspoken, but Nezuko still heard it. "I'm here. I'll keep you safe." She silently thanked Tanjiro, grateful for the comfort his presence provided. "I'm telling you, there's a demon in my house," Inosuke declared as he came up to Nezuko for their check-in with Yuzui. Neither the Sound Hashira nor Zenitsu had arrived yet. "Okay," Nezuko muttered, looking around for the two missing slayers. Inosuke started wiggling his arms in an attempt to describe the demon, then making a spider sign with his hands. "Wait, is it a snake, or a spider?" Nezuko asked, trying to figure out why Inosuke went with two entirely different animals to describe the demon. "Both," Inosuke snapped. "Well, we should wait for Yuzui and Zenitsu. Then you can tell them what you told me, and I can tell them what I managed to find out." Nezuko told him, flexing her hand and muttering the phrase to reveal her rank. To think they were already Kano rank slayers. "Zenitsu's not coming." The two slayers whipped around to find Yuzui sitting on the edge of the roof. "What?" Nezuko exclaimed. "He went missing last night. I can only assume he's dead." Yuzui sighed. "It's my fault. I was so desperate to find my wives, that I didn't consider the danger I was putting you kids in. But it seems like this demon is an upper rank. It's too much for you. Get out of Yoshiwara as soon as you can." "Yuzui, wait." Nezuko piped up. "I have information. Kyogaku House is the most suspicious of the three." Yuzui turned to her. "Was Zenitsu in Kyogaku House?" "Yeah." Yuzui replied. "What intel did you get at Takedo House?" "I learned about Ashinuk. Girls run away without paying their debts. No demon could ask for a better cover." Nezuko informed him. "And most of the cases were from Kyogaku House, along with a recent string of suicides. I heard that Oiran Warabeheim was the most suspected cause of both because she's cruel to those in Kyogaku House. If the demon is anywhere, it's in there. I would almost guarantee it. But it was in my house." Inosuke protested, punching Nezuko's arm. "Watch it!" Nezuko exclaimed, catching herself so as not to slip off the roof. "There has to be a reason for that," she added. "Don't worry about it." Yuzui cut in firmly. "Leave Yoshiwara before sunset. I'll take it from here." With that, he vanished. Nezuko and Inosuke turned to each other. "You said the demon was like a snake, right?" she asked, raising an eyebrow inquisitively. "Yeah. It was in the walls, and Makio disappeared while it was there." Inosuke answered. Nezuko pressed her index finger to her chin, squinting in thought. "It was midday. It was using the walls to hide from the sun. Like Santoro uses that box. But Zenitsu also disappeared despite Yuzui patrolling outside the houses." Nezuko muttered, putting the pieces together. That demon couldn't have gotten from Ajimoto to Kyogaku without being spotted or burning. There has to be a passage or a tunnel between the houses, maybe throughout the entire entertainment district. "Passage?" Inosuke asked. "Tonight. We'll meet at Ajimoto House." Nezuko told him. "Your house. If I'm not there by the time the place is opening, go searching on your own. I either got caught up in something or captured. You better not get grabbed, Kayamiko." Inosuke snapped. "Sure thing, boss." Nezuko replied with a playful salute, making her way back to Takedo House. If she wasn't too busy with chores, she'd try to investigate the house for any passages or tunnels. As she climbed into her room and put Tanjiro's box in the far corner, she tried to think of what blood demon art could let the demon fit into a tight space like what was between the walls. Especially if it was capturing humans at the same time. After changing back into her Demon Slayer uniform, Nezuko made her way to Koinatsu's room. She knocked on the door once the younger girls left. "Come in." Koinatsu replied. Nezuko slipped in, closing the door behind herself. Koinatsu turned to her, her eyes widening slightly. "Sumiko? I know I probably have a lot of explaining to do." Nezuko admitted with a sheepish smile. "But I figured I might as well come clean. At least to you." "What do you mean, Sumiko?" Koinatsu asked. "Well, first, my name isn't Sumiko. It was just a cover name," Nezuko said. "My name is Nezuko. Anne. Suma and I aren't related. Her husband is looking for her because she went missing, and I was sent to investigate. I lied to avoid suspicion." "Oh, I knew that." Koinatsu giggled. "There are some similarities between you, but it wasn't enough to call you sisters. Unless it was by adoption. I figured it best not to ask questions. And you seem like a kind girl, so I trusted your intentions were good. I'm glad I was right. Thanks for playing along. I appreciate it." Nezuko sighed. "I just wanted to say a few things, aside from the truth," she added, fiddling with the strap holding Tanjiro's box. "Thank you, for one thing. You were lovely to spend time with. I can see why the little ones look up to you the way they do." Koinatsu smiled at that. "And I'm going to find out the truth about what happened to all those missing girls." "Thank you." Koinatsu sighed. "Tonight is my last night, as well, you know. A man offered to take my contract and marry me. To think someone would want me as his wife." Nezuko smiled at that. "You deserve it. I hope your future husband treats you well. And, if you do end up having children, I know you'll be a wonderful mother," she told the Oiran. Nezuko pulled out the envelope she had in her haori, pushing it towards Koinatsu. "Please get this to the house MSTR, to pay for my lodging." Koinatsu wordlessly nodded in response. "Thank you, Nezuko." Koinatsu replied with a soft chuckle. "I wish I could do more for the missing girls. But knowing that there are people out there, trying to help them, it puts me a little at ease. Especially with my leaving." "Of course," Nezuko said with a bow. "Good luck with your marriage. And you with your investigation." Koinatsu responded as Nezuko leapt out of the window. It was time to figure this mystery out. She was almost at Ajimoto House when she felt a chill up her spine. Not as bad as when she saw Kibutsuji, or even Akaza or Gyako, but it was much stronger than either of the lower ranks she had fought. She turned to Takedo House. Hopefully, Inosuke wouldn't be too mad at her for the sudden change in their original plan. She leapt onto the windowsill to Koinatsu's room, and threw the window open. "Miss Koinatsu," she called out, only to find what could only be a demon in the room. Koinatsu was there, she was still alive, but she was being sked up by the demon's obi. "I was expecting a Hashira," the demon chuckled. "And don't bother yourself, sweetie, I won't be eating you." "What?" Nezuko whispered, confused by the demon's statement. The female demon turned to her, revealing the kanji for upper 6 engraved on her eyes and causing Nezuko to think up a long string of very vulgar words. "Oh, damn it. Of course it's me that runs into the demon. Just my DMN luck. Thanks, Kibutsuji. I hate you even more than I already did. It's a shame, really. You are quite appealing, and would have made an excellent meal." Upper 6 giggled. "If you didn't have that nasty scar on your face, I'd probably gobble you up right now. But I don't eat anyone who's dirty or ugly." "Release Miss Koinatsu," Nezuko demanded, only for the OBs to throw her out of the building. The sudden and harsh landing left her body numb. "You're okay. You're alive, you can still fight," Nezuko thought. With a silent apology to Tanjiro for jostling him, Nezuko turned to Upper Six. "Oh. You survived. I must say, I'm surprised a weakling like you managed that," she said with a wicked smirk. "Those eyes of yours are appealing. So appealing, I might just have to gouge them out and gobble them up," she declared, liking her lips. Nezuko stood up, faltering when the weight of Tanjiro's box shifted almost entirely to her left shoulder. The strap for her right arm was cut. "I'm sorry, Tanjiro," she whispered as she put the box down on the roof. The weight was going to throw her off balance with the box in its current state, and she couldn't afford that in this fight. "Just stay in there, okay? I'll handle this." "Dropping your dead weight?" Upper Six guessed. "I wonder if that'll mean a real challenge." "You're about to find out," Nezuko replied as she leapt down to the street. As she landed, a loud rumble echoed through the area. "What is all that racket? It's giving me a headache." Upper Six snarled, turning to the noise and back to Nezuko. "How many of you are here, brat?" "4. Like hell, I'm telling you." Nezuko spat, getting a withering glare in reply. "Tell me where the Hashira is, and I'll make this quick. I might even be convinced to spare your worthless life." "There is no Hashira here," Nezuko replied firmly, returning the demon's glare. "Well, then. I guess I'll have some fun with killing you," Upper Six said with a grin as her obi extended and swung towards Nezuko. The demon slayer quickly deflected the sashes, not wanting to find out what they did. "Flame breathing. First form," she yelled, running towards Upper Six as flames burst from her sword. "Unknowing fire." The demon dodged the attack, and an obi narrowly missed Nezuko's neck. The strands of hair it grazed were sliced, revealing the sash was a sharp and deadly weapon. Just like Mitsuri's sword. Nezuko realized. Her training with the love Hashira was about to come in handy. "Impressive reflexes, I'll give you that," Upper Six called out from several meters away. "But your movements are sloppy. Not to mention, my earlier attack chewed your sword to bits. Such awful bladesmithing, if it's in such poor condition after such a short time deflecting attacks." Nezuko spared a glance at her sword, seeing that the edge was chipped and rolled. It was blunted, and wouldn't be as effective at cutting. Even if it was at its sharpest, I can't guarantee I'll be able to decapitate her, Nezuko thought. The Hinakami Kagura takes a serious toll on my body, but it's more effective than flame breathing. Even if practicing it caused her to collapse while gasping for air after only a few moves, there was no doubting the difference in efficiency between the two breathing styles. Even if I haven't mastered it yet, Hinakami Kagura is the breath style I'm meant to use. I'll only stall my progress if I don't try to get past the strain. I've already improved. I just need to keep pushing. Given up, yet? Upper Six asked. Nezuko took a breath, raising her sword. If I can't decapitate her, I can at least buy time for Yuzui to get here and finish the job. Sometimes stalling for time is the best thing you can do, Nezuko told herself before leaping at the demon. Hinakami Kagura. Flame dance. She swung her sword in the perpendicular slashes. She sliced a few OBs, but it was nothing to celebrate. She leapt back from another attack, taking another breath. Nezuko ran towards Upper Six. Hinakami Kagura. Fake rainbow. After she finished the twists and rotations, she ran as fast as she could to get behind the demon. As expected, the obi went through Nezuko's afterimage before it flickered away. Hinakami Kagura. Nezuko ran up behind the demon, sword raised to perform the horizontal arc clear blue sky. Far too slow. The thread snapped, and a foot landed itself on Nezuko's abdomen, sending her flying. Nezuko quickly moved into the defensive falling technique, taking a recovery breath the second she stopped rolling. That was close. She thought as she dodged the OB's slicing where she had been only seconds prior. Hinakami Kagura, Raging Sun. Nezuko's strike only went through one of the OBs, and upper six had vanished. Nezuko looked at the OB she had cut, sighing in relief when she saw it was the one holding Konatsu. She looked around, dodging another OB aimed to slit her throat before whipping around to face the demon. Impressive. You managed to cut Konatsu free from my OB. Upper six noted with a glare before smirking. That was pretty cute of you. And your reflexes aren't half bad, I have to admit. I think I'll enjoy this fight, and getting to kill you. Nezuko twirled her sword, bracing for another attack. The OB swung, and Nezuko responded in kind. Come on. Just like Mitsuri taught you. Deflect in a way that limits collateral damage. These attacks are just like her sword. Nezuko told herself, picturing the love Hashira's flexible blade as she worked around the OBs in a twisted dance. She jumped back as more OBs flew through the air, slamming into upper six's head and neck. They're entering her body. Nezuko realized as the sashes were absorbed into the demon's flesh. The demon woman slumped over slightly once the last of the OBs were absorbed, and Nezuko tried to use the opening against her. Hinakami Kagura. Setting Sun Transformation. I knew it. Upper six gasped excitedly, dodging the attack and jumping onto the roof. I knew it, she exclaimed gleefully as her hair began to glow, shifting from its original black to a green-tipped white that shone radiantly in the moonlight. A Hashira really did show up. I can only imagine how pleased my MSTR will be. She must have gained more power. She's going to be even more difficult to fight. Nezuko thought, raising her sword again. What the hell is going on out here? Someone demanded, a man walking out into the streets. Is that a sword? What's all this commotion you've started out here? I don't know who you think you are, but you'd better get out of here. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to return indoors. Nezuko replied. It's not safe, she added before ice raced up her spine. She whipped around to see the OBs cutting into the buildings and the ground, glowing pink with their added power. Nezuko shoved the man behind her and swung at the OB headed straight for them. Redirect or pin down. Don't deflect carelessly. More OBs slashed at her, and Nezuko slashed right back in the hopes of redirecting the attacks away from the buildings and civilians in the area. You little pest. Upper six yelled, the attack increasing in speed. As the glowing sashes faded away, Nezuko felt pain in her chest. Seconds after she noticed the pain, blood began gushing from her chest. The gash went from the right side under her collarbone to the left side, just under her shoulder. A pained yell brought her attention to the man, who was missing a hand. The buildings crumbled around them, followed quickly by terrified screams. DMN it. I couldn't block that many attacks. Nezuko thought, pressing her free hand to her wound. Serves them right. Upper six laughed as she began walking away. People were hurt, there were corpses because of her, and she was walking away like she was responsible for nothing. Sir, take some twine and tie it around your arm. Nezuko instructed, her tone dangerously close to a snarl. You need to make a tourniquet, so tie it tight, she added as she went into recovery breathing. Once she was sure she was going to limit the amount of blood leaving her wound, she turned back to upper six. Don't even think you can run away after causing all this damage, you hear me, she screamed out to the woman. Get back here and face me. Face the consequences for what you've done. Oh, you're still alive, she hummed, glaring at Nezuko. There's no reason for ugly people, like you, to be alive, brat. Do us all a favor, and die alongside them. Nezuko's heart pounded in her ears, the terrified and desperate cries of the civilians becoming white noise. Something shifted, her seething rage bringing Nezuko into an odd trance. The only thing her mind could focus on was the demon, and ensuring she was beheaded by dawn. And if not, Then Nezuko would pin her down to burn in the morning light. They were okay. His wives were alive. Tengen barely kept himself from sighing in relief the second he saw each of them. He was going to pamper them as much as humanly possible when this mission was over. For now, though, he had to actually finish said mission. He turned to the boar kid. "Hey, where's Kamado?" he asked. At least he could rest easy that she hadn't been captured, given she wasn't here with Tengen's wives and Agatsuma in the cave. "I dunno," the boar kid grumbled. "Pyanko said she would meet me at my house, but she didn't show up." Tengen tensed up at that, then immediately focused on the sounds of the entertainment district. Thankfully, he'd taken the time to memorize each of the kid's sounds. He would have been a fool if he hadn't, especially given Kamado and her tendency to run into trouble. There. It was distant, but it was Kamado. And she was fighting a demon. One that sounded powerful. Powerful enough to be an upper rank. Damn it. Tengen hissed. "This is why I told them to leave, especially Kamado." He turned to Suma and Makio. "Don't worry about us, Lord Tengen." Makio told him. "We'll start to evacuate the civilians. Make sure you find Hinetsuru and get her outta here, too." Tengen replied. "And make sure you all get out yourselves once the civilians are cleared out, you hear me?" They had already been in too much danger for his liking. Suma and Makio nodded, and Tengen gave them each a quick kiss before the two of them ran to start helping the captured civilians. Meanwhile, Tengen grabbed Kamado's friends and took off to find the demonic sound. Hopefully, Kamado was still alive when he got to her. This demon, she really doesn't give a damn about anything except herself. Nezuko thought, her grip on her sword tightening to the point she was sure her knuckles were completely white. Something dripped from her eyes, the metallic smell of blood coming closer to her nose. Her mind went blank with only one thing to focus on. Destroy the demon at all costs. With speed she didn't know she possessed, she leapt after the demon and managed to grab onto her leg. "What the hell?" Upper Six gasped. Nezuko swung at her, but the demon ducked under the strike and ripped her leg off. Nezuko stumbled from the sudden lack of resistance, regaining her balance quickly while the demon woman leapt to the other end of the roof. "Why do you kill so many innocent people?" Nezuko demanded. "Those lives you took will never return. Humans don't regenerate like you demons do." She threw the leg in her grip, glaring venomously at Upper Six. "Answer me, DMN it. Why do you kill? Is it amusing to you, to watch innocent people suffer and die painfully? Where have I heard this before?" Daki thought. For some reason, those words resonated in her mind. Not only the girl's words, but also the intensity behind her blood-filled eyes. Were they from her past, before she turned? Images flashed before her eyes. Instead of the brat she was actually fighting, a swordsman stood before her. His red-tinted hair and red haori were flowing in the wind as he stared her down with an intensity that left Daki rooted in place. Such disregard for human life, the swordsman scoffed. What's so amusing about this? The images flickered, and the man was suddenly directly in front of her. Close enough for her to see the swordsman's Hanafuda earrings and fiery mark, the latter of which resembled a demon's crest. So tell me, then. What is the weight of a human life to you? He asked, something about him making Daki tremble deep down in her core. Who was that? I don't remember him. Daki thought, trying to figure out why she saw that mysterious swordsman while the demon slayer girl spoke to her. Their words were so similar, something about the two causing chills to race up Daki's spine. No, I've never seen him before. The world flickered again, and the swordsman was there again. How could you ever forget? He demanded, and something clicked into place. These aren't my memories. The cells. These have to be Lord Musen's memories. Daki realized. Her MSTR had fought that swordsman before, and something about this girl triggered those memories. Were you not human once? Nezuko asked Upper Six as the demon regrew her severed leg and slammed her fist into the roof. Did you not feel pain? Do you not understand suffering? I don't remember anything of the past. Upper Six declared, clearly proud of the fact. I'm a demon, now, and that's all that matters. Why should I care about my human past, she added, going on about how demons didn't die or need human necessities. Nezuko didn't pay attention to any of it. It was just pointless justification for a demon's abhorrent actions. We appealing and powerful demons can do anything we want. I've heard enough. Nezuko hissed, running forward with inhuman speed. Blood Demon Art. 8-layered OB slash. Upper Six yelled, creating a crisscrossing pattern with her OBs with a victorious smirk. Nezuko focused, swinging her sword in a circular motion. Hinakami Kagura. Burning bones, summer Sunday fire burst from her blade, slicing through the OBs as if they were butter. Nezuko leapt at the demon again, aiming for her neck. Hinakami Kagura. Raging Sun. One slash cut into Upper Six's chest, and the other went into her neck. As if someone weak like you could behead me, the demon snarled. Her neck was extended, most of it having the same pattern as her obi. It softened to blunt the blow. Nezuko noted, trying to cut through the flesh with no results. The two girls leapt apart, and Upper Six sent more sashes towards Nezuko. The demon slayer deflected the strikes, ignoring the ache in her chest. She didn't have to worry too much about it, she hadn't begun bleeding again. Her priority was dealing with the demon in front of her. My fingers are trembling. Daki thought as the demon slayer brat deflected her slashes. How is she so fast? All that sharp and sudden movement should have that wound of hers wide open and gushing blood. Daki quickly leapt away from the demon slayer. Are you even human? How aren't you being brought to your knees by the pain you have to be in? She wondered as the girl followed her, leg raised for a kick. The slayer's landing left a sizable dent in the roof, and Daki stared at the area in shock as she narrowly dodged another slash for her neck. This should have been an easy kill after she wounded this demon slayer. But there was something about this girl, something that made Daki tremble alongside her MSTR's cells in her body. The demon slayer was a force to be reckoned with, Daki couldn't hold back. Nezuko watched as more OBs emerged from Upper Six's back. She counted 13. Despite there being more of the sashes, however, they were moving so slowly. That made dodging them easy, and she carefully struck the OBs so they all converged before stabbing them to keep them in place. She pulled against Upper Six's attempt to call her weapon back to her, pulling the OBs tight. You think that's enough to stop me? Upper Six asked. It'll take more than that, she declared as she pulled against Nezuko's sword. You may have pulled them tight enough to cut through, but I can loosen them all again in the blink of an eye. You'll never be able to cross the distance between us in that instant, you. Just shut up. Nezuko leapt forward, cutting through the OBs with ease and moving towards Upper Six in an instant. I just had to cut through them before they bent. It was easy. She swung for the demon's neck. She could do it. She could win. She slashed them. Daki thought, frozen from shock as the blazing sword approached her neck. She couldn't recall clashing with any demon slayer that moved so fast. The blade was mere centimeters from Upper Six's neck when Nezuko felt a ghost of a hand on her shoulder. Nezuko. Dad? What's going on? Nezuko thought as her arms began to tremble, causing her sword to shake as well. Why am I trembling all of a sudden? Nezuko, breathe, her father told her, his voice right beside her and giving a sense of urgency. You have to breathe, now. Before it's too late, he continued. Quickly, Nezuko. Breathe. Then Nezuko realized the pain in her chest wasn't her wound, it was her lungs trying to provide her body with air they didn't have. She had been holding her breath the whole time. She gasped for air, desperate to resupply her body with the oxygen it was in dire need of. Her strained gasp quickly became a coughing fit, and she dropped to her hands and knees as her legs gave out. She could barely breathe, much less stand up and fight. Not good. I'm losing consciousness. Nezuko realized as black faded into the corners of her vision. Her ears were ringing, she couldn't hear what Upper Six was saying. She doubted it was good. Just before she passed out, Upper Six went flying in a familiar green and black checkered pattern past Nezuko's darkening vision. Tanjiro. Nezuko managed to gasp out before her lack of oxygen took its toll. Her eyes rolled back, and the world went dark. Tanjiro woke up to the smell of blood. And it wasn't just any blood, it was Nezuko's blood. Someone hurt his sister, and badly if the intensity of the scent was any indication. And close to Nezuko and her blood scent, stifling in the air, was a scent that was so close to Kibutsuji's, Tanjiro could only think of that night. In the darkness of his box, he could only see brief flashes of people, of his family, being attacked by the monster. The phantom sensation of fire burned in his veins, though Tanjiro couldn't remember what it was exactly. But he did know one thing for certain. Kibutsuji, or someone very close to him, was fighting Nezuko. And they hurt her. Save them, Tanjiro, a voice cried in the back of his mind. I have to protect Nezuko. Tanjiro thought, squeezing his eyes shut before getting the box open and running for where the scents of his little sister and Kibutsuji were strongest. He found them just in time to hear Nezuko's desperate gasp for air as she collapsed on the roof in front of the demon she was fighting. The female demon's scent practically radiated power. This was undoubtedly the demon with the scent so eerily similar to her MSTR's. How pathetic, the demon spat as she walked up to Nezuko, who was coughing between her gasping breaths. There was blood around his sister's eyes as well as across her chest. She was hurt worse than Tanjiro thought. He leapt from the rooftop he was on as the demon declared her intentions to kill Nezuko, and he punched the woman. The demon went flying across the roof, her head in pieces from the amount of force Tanjiro used. He landed, putting himself between the demon and his little sister. He heard Nezuko gasp out his name, but his focus was on the other demon. He had to get this monster far away from his sister, and keep it there. He's not taking anyone else. Tanjiro told himself as he growled behind the muzzle, feeling it cracking between his teeth. More flashes of that night flooded his mind, memories of blood everywhere and the monster who spilled it, and his rage continued to build. The demon's head began regenerating itself, and she immediately started talking once her mouth was back. You brat! You filthy traitor, the demon in front of him screeched. You're the one, aren't you? You're the demon he told me about. The one he was talking about has to be you, she added as her head continued regenerating. I'll pluck out your eyes, you ugly runt. I'll gouge them out and eat them, then I'll destroy you. Daki was furious. First, that demon slayer brat kept her from eating Konatsu. Then the brat refused to die, even with the wound Daki had inflicted on her. The stupid girl had even come close to decapitating her. Luckily for Daki, it seemed the girl had forgotten her body's limits and collapsed right at Daki's feet. But before she could slice the girl's head off, her own head got blown to bits by the Dmed runt in front of her. The same runt that was the traitor Lord Musen had told her about. She had committed her MSTR's description of the demon to memory when he told her she was the only one he could turn to for such a task. He has red-tinted hair, and wears a green and black checkered haori. He also has a flame-like demon mark on his forehead. I will happily destroy this traitor for you, Lord Musen. Daki thought, straightening up and keeping her gaze on the other demon. Then a chill raced down her spine as something prodded at her mind. I need you to capture him alive, Daki. This demon is invaluable. Lord Musen's voice echoed in her mind. Right, he had asked that this traitor be spared. Daki didn't know why. Perhaps so Lord Musen could personally make the runt suffer for his betrayal. Regardless, Daki would ensure this demon didn't leave Yoshiwara. But there was something about him. He may be half developed, clearly hadn't eaten enough humans, but something about him was changing. It seemed like the mark on his head was changing, not dissimilar to her hair once she reabsorbed her obi. But where her hair changed color, this demon's mark expanded. He's nowhere near my level, he'll be easy enough to incapacitate. She assured herself as her obi whipped around her. The little demon snarled. Were it any other bottom feeder, Daki would have found it cute how he thought he could scare her. But right now, he was nothing more than an annoyance. How about this, brat? She asked with a smirk. If you surrender willingly, and allow me to take you to Lord Musen without any sort of a fight, this'll be nice and easy. But if you don't, then I'll do whatever it takes to get you to him. No matter how many little pieces I have to chop you up into before I stuff you into my obi, though, I will be taking you to him before dawn. No way am I going to him without a fight. Tanjiro ignored the demon woman's threats, and prepared for another attack. He was caught off guard by the demon woman's obi swinging around, and one cut his leg off while another cut off his arm and sliced through his torso before throwing him into a building. She's stronger than I expected. This is bad. Tanjiro thought. Could you be any weaker? She laughed as she landed across the road from where Tanjiro struggled to get out of the rubble. You poor thing. Your torso and lower body went their separate ways. Had she cut through him? Tanjiro could still feel his lower body. Maybe she didn't cut all the way through without realizing. It's honestly surprising a demon as weak as you managed to escape Lord Musen. Oh, well. I suppose I'll just stuff you in my obi now, and send you off once I kill the demon slayers here. Horror struck Tanjiro at the mention of the demon slayers. His little sister was in danger, he had to grow his leg back. Protect Nezuko. Heal faster, and stop this demon from hurting Nezuko. Tanjiro mentally yelled at himself. You can't fail her. You can't let her die because of your weakness. He kept pushing. And a new leg burst from the stump where the previous one had been severed, allowing him to get out from beneath the rubble. What? The demon gasped. Tanjiro could smell her shock as he regenerated his arm, replacing what the other demon severed in the blink of an eye. His healing had gotten faster, then. Good, he couldn't afford to waste time regrowing limbs. The familiar scent of that monster's blood invaded his nose, and he couldn't hold back the growl that came with the rage flooding his veins. This demon, she's so close to him. Just like the others. But he had been close those times. If Tanjiro had been even a second late, his sister would be dead. He should have jumped in sooner, he shouldn't have let her fight alone against this demon. She's holding so much of his blood, and she's tried to kill Nezuko. Tanjiro thought as he bit into the bamboo, using much more force than usual. I won't lose my little sister. This demon is going to pay for hurting Nezuko. The muzzle snapped and dropped to the ground with a quiet and hollow thud. The destruction of the demon in front of him was the only thing he knew would settle the unrelenting fury settling into his core. He wouldn't stop until the threat to his sister was wiped off the face of the earth. He's already regenerated. Daki thought. This half-developed runt, who she thought would be an easy foe to defeat, was standing in front of her with both legs whole and intact. The only indications it had even been cut were the blood on its clothes and skin, as well as a cut that went most of the way through its robe and kimono, and the fact one leg was bare from her slicing it off. This demon's regeneration, it's on par with the upper Kazuki. She realized as the runt raised its arm and grew a new forearm in the blink of an eye. The bamboo the brat was holding in its mouth dropped to the ground, and glowing red eyes turned to meet her own green gaze. For the second time tonight, Daki saw that mysterious swordsman. The demon runt's whole demeanor changed, radiating a presence that sent chills up Daki's spine. Nezuko! Nezuko! Takeo's voice cried out as Nezuko struggled to regain consciousness. He was scared, whatever was going on had to be urgent, but she couldn't get herself to move at the moment. She really messed up this time. Nezuko, Please. Get up. Hurry. The demon's shocked expression turned furious, and Tanjiro knew it was time to stop holding back. He had to protect Nezuko at all costs. He focused, forcing himself to grow into his adult form while warmth crawled across his skin. He then concentrated on the demon woman, ready to fight her with all his strength. Daki watched in shock as the demon in front of her changed. She was quickly realizing just how wrong she was in perceiving him as a weak runt. The flame mark on his forehead was going across his nose now, almost touching a new mark that came from his jaw, while a third mark manifested on the other side of his forehead. More fiery marks began to spread across his limbs and torso as he grew to the size of an adult, and a horn emerged from the first mark. Looking at this demon, feeling his power, Daki felt an emotion she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt fear. The demon prepared to attack, but Tanjiro was faster. He ran up to her at lightning speed, intent on landing a hit until his leg got severed again along with an arm. "There goes 2 of your limbs," the other demon yelled. "Now for your neck. Regenerate now." He told himself, his leg regrowing as he twisted around to land a headbutt. The other demon let out a pained shriek as her skull caved in, and she slammed into the ground. She tried to get up, but Tanjiro put a stop to that by slamming his leg into her spine. Tanjiro was deaf to the demon's pain as she screamed from whatever agony she felt. A part of him hated hurting another living thing, but this woman was different. She had mercilessly killed countless people. He could smell the sheer amount of blood this demon had spilled. Nezuko was hurt because of her. She was so much like Kibutsuji, so much like the monster that still haunted Tanjiro's nightmares, that whatever compassion he felt towards her was snuffed out as quickly as it had appeared in his mind. Her suffering was well deserved. While listening to her pained screams, Tanjiro couldn't keep a smile from creeping onto his face. He felt an almost sickening form of enjoyment. And the same part of him that reveled in this demon's suffering? It wanted more. He regenerated instantly. His regeneration speed is even greater than mine. Daki was in excruciating pain as her spine reattached itself after the boy's leg left her back. How could a demon who hadn't even devoured any humans be so powerful, surpassing her level? No human could survive the amount of blood that would take, right? Her arm was broken off, eliciting a pained shriek from Daki. Then the brat kept going, breaking off her other arm and even landing a few more kicks to her back when he was done. She didn't see much after that, since her face was being repeatedly ground into the dirt, but she caught a glimpse of the sick grin the brat was sporting. The light in his eyes, that sadistic gleam. He was enjoying this, and that joy he derived from her suffering scared Daki a little. "Nezuko. You have to get up. It's Tanjiro." Takeo cried as he continued shaking Nezuko's shoulder. "Nezuko, you have to help Tanjiro. Tanjiro's in trouble." Nezuko thought as she struggled to get up. "You have to help him." Takeo continued fearfully, and Nezuko forced her eyes open. She was met with her younger brother crying as the wind sent snow flying around them. "Help our big brother, Nezuko. Help him, or he's gonna lose himself." "What do you mean, Takeo?" Nezuko asked her little brother. Takeo turned away from her, towards the blizzard surrounding them. "Big brother's a kind person. He's gentle, but he's scary when he's mad," Takeo admitted. "You can be, too. Like when that man bumped into a little kid and hurt him, and you got all up in his face and demanded that he apologize. You take after one another in that way, I guess," he added. "People who get mad at other people, rarely look out for themselves. That's what scares me. Because they could lose so much," he sighed as he turned to Nezuko. "Please help our big brother, Nezuko. Before it's too late. Before he's not himself anymore." As the world faded to white, Nezuko saw the briefest flash of clawed hands covered in blood. Nezuko gasped as she finally woke up, and immediately searched for Tanjiro while trying not to panic. "Where is he? Please don't let it be too late." Nezuko thought, feeling the familiar tug. She followed the pull, dread settling in her gut when she heard the pain screaming. And it was getting louder as she ran towards the pull from her instincts. I believe that Tanjiro is only using a fraction of his power. Kyojiru's voice told her. Nezuko remembered that, and the warning that Tanjiro using any more than that fraction could very likely cost him his remaining humanity. She desperately hoped she wasn't too late. Stay with me a little longer, Tanjiro. Nezuko silently pleaded, reluctantly sheathing her sword to focus on running. She stumbled, falling to her knees and getting forced to catch her breath. Damn it, I was so stupid. She thought amidst her labored breaths. She forced herself to her feet. She had to get to Tanjiro. If she didn't. Images of Kyojiru and Mitsuri flashed in her mind. Nezuko forced them away before she imagined what would happen if she didn't get to her brother in time. She would never forgive herself if her mistake cost them their lives, on top of her own and Tanjiro's. Get away from me, the demon screamed, her obi lashing out again. This time, the surprisingly sharp sash cut off both of Tanjiro's arms and legs, and the demon also sent an obi through Tanjiro's neck. He didn't think she could still move. I'll chop you into pieces, and stuff you into my obi. Don't lose. Don't lose. This hideous bottom feeder. Thinking he can beat me up like that without consequence. Me. Upper 6. Daki thought as her obi raced to her opponent. To her shock, however, the traitor's severed limbs caught her weapon. No, they weren't fully severed. The other demon's blood kept the limbs connected. Daki stared in shock, realizing too late that some of that blood had landed on her. Blood demon art, sun's raging fire. The demon woman was set ablaze with red fire, causing more agonized screams while the OBs retreated. The lack of attacks gave Tanjiro a chance to heal, and he was quick to call his severed limbs and head back to his torso. Once his neck snapped back together, his focus was back on his opponent. As familiar fire danced through the air, Nezuko was struck with a horrifying realization. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. She could feel it down to her core. Tanjiro wasn't just using his full power, he was downright furious. It was an emotion Nezuko had never managed to associate with her big brother. He had gotten angry before, but never like this. Whenever Tanjiro was angry, the worst it came with was a raised voice and possibly some harsh words. He never lashed out physically. He'd never been angry enough. Humans have limits, but the same cannot be said for demons. Even emotions have limits in humans. But demons can experience rage so strong that they will not stop. Not until the flesh of their enemy is wiped from existence. Nezuko finished in a whisper, her eyes wide with terror. I have to calm him down. She thought as she began making her way to Tanjiro. Tanjiro finally extinguished the fire, leaving a badly burnt demon in its wake. Perfect. She was vulnerable now. Tanjiro launched himself at her, slamming the demon woman's face into the ground and kicking it a few more times. A tiny part of him was terrified of this new power, of what he was doing. But what was there to be afraid of? He was powerful enough to beat this demon easily. To protect Nezuko like he was supposed to. This demon deserved what she was getting, and Tanjiro couldn't even begin to explain the rush of joy that flooded his mind at getting to unleash that long-overdue justice on her. He grabbed the girl by her hair, and threw her into the nearest building. He was about to follow her when he smelled something. Something that made his stomach cramp the tiniest bit. He turned to the scent, and spotted a human clutching their bleeding arm. All the regeneration, maintaining his current form, putting everything he had into fighting this demon. He had drained himself of quite a lot of energy, and he just realized how hungry it had made him. Don't hurt humans. Don't eat them. A small part of him protested. The last bits of his humanity trying to hold him back. But he was starving, and food was right in front of him. The scent was painfully appetizing, causing Tanjiro to drool as a part of him continued to resist the overwhelming longing to eat. Just one bite. No one has to know about one little bite. With a roar, he lunged for the bleeding human. Tanjiro, no. Nezuko ran into the building just as Tanjiro lunged for one of the CRTSNs. She grabbed her scabbard, and shoved it into Tanjiro's mouth. She could only do so much. She was a lot smaller than Tanjiro at the moment, but she had to try to keep him from hurting someone. Once she knew the scabbard was securely between his teeth, Nezuko grabbed the other end. Tanjiro, she grunted as she yanked against Tanjiro's attempt to continue his attack. Tanjiro tried to get past the scabbard in his mouth, roaring and screaming around the blockage, but Nezuko didn't let herself budge. She couldn't, there was too much on the line with her brother like this. Tanjiro, snap out of it. You don't have to keep going. You can stop fighting. Just go back to normal. Shrink down. Go to sleep, and heal. Please, she continued to plead while Tanjiro fought to get free. I'm sorry, Tanjiro. You shouldn't have had to fight. I'm sorry I'm still not strong enough. I'm sorry I'm still so weak. Tanjiro scratched her, and Nezuko couldn't hold back the pained yelp as the claws cut into her cheek. Tanjiro quickly got onto all fours, and Nezuko tightened her grip on her scabbard before Tanjiro jumped through the ceiling and onto the next floor. The action aggravated her injuries, but Nezuko continued to hold on. She couldn't let go. What's going on? Someone gasped. Nezuko forced herself to ignore the shocked yells as she tried to gain better footing. Tanjiro, please. Come back. Come back to me, big brother. I know you're angry, I know you're hurting, but you can't lose yourself. Don't let the demon win, please, she cried, her tears stinging the fresh cuts on her cheek as she continued to fight to keep her brother from hurting someone. So, you can use a blood demon art, too? Upper Six asked as her OBs wreaked more havoc. Most of her skin had been burnt away, some places even revealed her skeleton, but she was still dangerous. And her presence only made Tanjiro more aggressive, making it harder for Nezuko to keep her grip while he tried to lunge for her. As much as they needed to defeat the demon, Nezuko wasn't certain Tanjiro would be able to discern allies and enemies at the moment. You got some nerve, doing this to me. I don't know what it was, but it's taking me forever to heal from. I can't let go of the scabbard, or Tanjiro is going to eat someone. But I can't let this demon run around, or someone's still going to get hurt. Nezuko thought before Yuzui came to the scene, slicing the Obi attack to shreds. Yuzui! Nezuko exclaimed at the sight of the sound Hashira. What did I miss? Yuzui asked. Thanks for coming. You're a Hashira, right? Upper Six spoke up. I've been waiting for you. Had Yuzui not sliced her? Because if he hadn't, that was really stupid of him. Shut up. Yuzui replied. I'm not here to waste my time on you, get lost. Waste his time? Is he really that skilled, because she's been nothing short of a menace all night? Nezuko thought, staring incredulously at the exchange. You're not the one I've been searching for. There's no way you're an upper rank. Yuzui turned to the demon woman. Not when you're that weak. Come again. Upper Six snarled, seeming oblivious to the blood welling up on her neck. A split second later, Upper Six's head dropped into her hands as she fell to her knees, and the sound Hashira turned to the siblings. So. What's going on here? Yuzui asked as he knelt in front of Tanjiro. This is Kamado Tanjiro, yeah. I see he's become a flashy demon. Really? What gave it away? Nezuko thought before the Hashira glared at her. What the hell is with this sorry state, huh? After all that grandstanding in front of the MSTR? No one told him that he could go into this flashy form, he snapped. Tanjiro responded by snarling and trying to slash at Yuzui, but Nezuko pulled him back before he could cause damage. I know. He showed up to protect me, I did something stupid and almost got killed for it. But he's a lot more aggressive than I've ever seen him get, and I can't calm him down." Nezuko replied. "If you have any tips for calming an angry demon, I'd love to hear them," she added as Tanjiro jerked against the scabbard in his mouth. "Sorry, kid. This isn't my wheelhouse," Yuzui replied. "Just get him under control. Brats who throw temper tantrums have no place in battle. Besides, he's your brother. Don't you know how to calm him down yourself?" he deadpanned. "Try something unflashy, I guess. Like singing him a lullaby, or something." Nezuko nodded, trying to figure out what to do. Tanjiro braced his feet against the floor, pushing with enough force to send himself flying out of the building and taking Nezuko with him. Their backs slammed against the ground, and Nezuko bit back a pained yelp as her brother resumed his attempts to get free. "Tanjiro, calm down," Nezuko yelled, only getting enraged roaring in reply. "Calm him down. What did Yuzui suggest, again? Like singing him a lullaby, or something. Would a lullaby really work?" Another JRK against her scabbard made up Nezuko's mind. She didn't have time to waste contemplating her chances of success. She had to just try, and hope she could save her brother. "Mom, please let this work," Nezuko silently pleaded, pulling on her scabbard so she was closer to Tanjiro. "Hush, hush, baby bunny, up there on the hill. Tell me, why are your ears so very long?" she grunted, forcing Tanjiro to stay down. "Because when I was small, my mother ate the leaves off a tree that was tall. That is why my ears are so long." As she recited the familiar lullaby, Tanjiro's thrashing began to slow down. "Please work. Please. Hush, hush, baby bunny, up there on the hill. Tell me." Nezuko reached out for Tanjiro's hand, gently holding it as her brother's eyes widened. She continued singing that song. He'd heard that song before, but where? As she kept singing, Nezuko's face slowly faded into that of the woman from his memories, the one Tamayo reminded him of. Who was she, again? "Tanjiro," the woman whispered. "She's important. Why can't I remember?" Tanjiro wondered. The woman began singing the same song Nezuko had been singing, and the white around them faded to reveal the inside of a house. "Why is it that your eyes are so very red?" the woman sang, her voice further away than before. Tanjiro turned to the voice, seeing the woman cradling a small child in her arms. "Because, when my mother was expecting me, she chose to dine on red berries from a tree. That is why my eyes are red, like the berries from that tree. And that's why Big Brother's eyes are red," another voice declared with a giggle, bringing Tanjiro's attention to the tiny, brightly smiling version of Nezuko by the woman's side. "Because Mom ate lots of red berries when he was in your tummy." "That's right," Nezuko, the woman, their mother, his mind supplied, replied with a smile. Nezuko smiled even more, if that was even possible. Tanjiro turned his gaze to the man he was seated beside. The man's face was so blurry, he could barely make out that it was even there, but something told him the man was very important. "Did Grandma do the same thing?" he asked. The man chuckled, resting a hand on Tanjiro's head. "I guess so," he replied. "Then I wonder what berries Mama ate when Nezuko was in her tummy." "Because Nezuko has pink eyes," Tanjiro said. Their mother giggled before she began to sing the lullaby again. Her voice began echoing slightly as the house and the forest outside were replaced with tall buildings. The hand holding his own was rough with calluses, the familiar pink of Nezuko's favorite kimono just out of the corner of his eye. "They're all gone," Tanjiro remembered. He and Nezuko were all they had left. Everyone else was dead. Their parents, their little siblings, all gone. Then it hit him, what had happened over the last few minutes. He had been so angry, so terrified of losing Nezuko too, He hadn't been able to think of anything except annihilating that demon girl to make sure she wouldn't come near his little sister again. He almost killed someone. A look at Nezuko revealed she had new cuts on her cheek. I hurt her. I wanted to protect her, but I hurt her. Tanjiro realized, his eyes wide and stinging. He had lost himself in his rage, and he hated himself for almost giving in entirely. How could he have let that happen? DMNU, Kibutsuji. DMNU for what you've done. Nezuko thought when she saw the tears welling up in her brother's eyes. Only a moment passed before Tanjiro began crying. It wasn't the quiet tears Nezuko was accustomed to from Tanjiro, not the tears he shed when he tried to stay strong for their little siblings in the wake of their father's death. Her brother was letting out grief-stricken wails, and tears were pouring from his eyes. Despite the pain she was in, Nezuko crawled so she was in front of him. Nezuko, Tanjiro leaned forward until he was resting his head on Nezuko's shoulder, and Nezuko wrapped her arms around her big brother. She let him cry, coming to a realization. Tanjiro never got to grieve the loss of their family. He had become a demon, and then slept for 2 years. A part of her wondered if he even remembered they were gone before now. If he was just now remembering the massacre that turned him into this. Oh, Tanjiro. Nezuko gasped. Her embrace tightened, her own eyes tearing up. I'm so sorry you had to go through all this. You don't deserve this, big brother. You're far too kind to be suffering like this. Why is it that the kindest people suffer the most? I'm here. I'm here, she whispered as Tanjiro shrank, the fire markings vanishing and the horn retreating into his head. Tanjiro's sobs petered out as he shrank, becoming hiccups and whimpers until he finally fell asleep in his child form. He curled up against Nezuko's chest, tears still clinging to his lashes. Thank you, Mom. Nezuko whispered as she wiped away her own tears. He's asleep. The lullaby worked. She thought with a relieved sigh, hugging Tanjiro tightly. I'm so sorry, she whispered, squeezing her eyes shut as a few of her tears spilled. Tengen stared at where the Kamado siblings had been. From the other Hashira's reports, this hadn't happened before. Sure, the demon got aggressive when his sister was in danger, but none of the previous reports mentioned an advanced form. This was going to be one hell of a debrief. Hey! Don't you ignore me. Oh. The demon wasn't dead yet. Tengen turned, wondering why the demon hadn't even begun to disintegrate. You're still here? He asked. You've been nothing but unflashy, so drop dead. Just because I'm like this, doesn't mean I've lost yet, the demon protested. I'm an upper-rank demon. Tengen rolled his eyes. Sorry, but you can't be an upper Kazuki. Tengen scoffed. I'll have you know that I am upper 6, the demon shrieked. Was she really so stupid? Then why are you holding your severed head, right now? Tengen asked. What, did I cut your brain out, too? Or maybe whatever scorched her melted the thing. I'm just more powerful than you can comprehend. If it weren't for that rotten traitor and his stupid blood demon art, I could have taken you on easily, the demon replied. I may only be at 6, right now. But I'm going to get even stronger. Don't care, didn't ask. Tengen deadpanned. To his surprise, the demon began wailing. It was a shrill noise, and it grated on his ears. And seriously, why hadn't she started disintegrating yet? I really am upper 6. I really am, the demon whined through her tears. You just can't accept how amazing I am. Is she seriously throwing a tantrum? Tengen thought incredulously, feeling a faint sense of foreboding. Something was creating a new sound, but he didn't know what. Could it be something to do with why the girl hadn't turned to ash? Die. All of you just die, the demon yelled, slamming her fists into the floor and letting her head roll off her lap. He cut my head off. He cut my head off, she cried as the new sound got louder. Help me. Brother. He cut my head off. He cut my head off, she cried as the new sound got louder. Help me. Brother, she screamed as her back swelled, allowing a new demon to emerge. Of course. Tengen thought, raising his cleavers. Of course the demon wouldn't die, if he didn't decapitate the main body. He swung for the newcomer, hoping to end this before it got worse. He sliced at the demon, but heard no thud of a severed head. Come on, now. There's no use crying, a new voice said. Tengen turned to the grating voice, his eyes wide as he laid eyes on the new demon. Can't you reattach your own head by yourself? The new demon asked, reattaching the girl's head. I guess you're not always the sharpest tool in the shed, he added, stroking the demon girl's hair as the burns slowly receded. You really should take better care of your face, you know. After all, you were born with such a pretty face. Who the hell is this guy? Tengen asked himself. The girl said brother. Is this who she was talking about? Is he the main body? Either way, he needed to end this fast. Tengen lunged for the demons, intending to decapitate the brother. However, he missed, and got cut instead. Nice job, the brother grumbled. Tengen turned to him, spotting the glowing, red sickles in the demon's grasp. That must have been what cut him. I was going in for the kill, you know. But you were able to stop me. Good for you. The sound Hashira and the demon stared at each other for a moment, then the latter growled. Look at you, huh? Aren't you a handsome guy? What is his deal? Tengen thought. What are you, at least 6 foot? The demon asked as he began scratching his face. And you've got some meat on your bones. I could never get any muscle, no matter what. And not a single scar, blemish, or birthmark in sight. Oh, I envy you, he snarled, his claws digging deep enough to draw blood. Would you mind just dropping dead? And in the most agonizing way, at that? Like getting skinned alive, or having that belly of yours slit open, he added, face breaking into a manic grin. Brother, wait, the sister piped up. He's not the only one who was tormenting me. There were others. One of them was that disgusting traitor. That one was the one who burned me, she added tearfully. I was just doing my best, and they all ganged up on me, she whined. Was she really playing the victim card? Given the condition Rengoku's kid was in, as well as the nearby area, he'd hardly call her injuries unjustified. Is that so? The brother inquired, his glare intensifying as his grip on his sickles tightened. My little sister is just doing her best with what little brains she has, and you slayers gang up on her and bully her. I'll have to massacre everyone who laid a finger on her, he snarled, swinging his sickles. You'll all pay for what you've done. Because my name is Jutaro. The brother threw his sickles, and Tengen ducked under the attack. Nezuko looked up at the red glow approaching her, and ducked under the spinning weapons. She looked up again to see they were sickles. Wait, sickles. Nezuko did a double take, her eyes wide. Upper Six didn't wield sickles. Don't tell me there's another one. Please don't let it be another one. She thought, tightening her hold on Tanjiro. Nezuko. Zenitsu called out, bringing the girl's attention to her friends. Zenitsu was asleep, but Nezuko decided not to question it. We're here. The big guy just dropped us off and left us. Can you believe that? Inosuke yelled. Nezuko nodded as she stood up, turning in the direction of where she remembered the box being. I'll be back soon. I need to get Tanjiro back in his box, she told the boys before running to where she had left the box. I'll allow it. Inosuke declared. Thank you. Nezuko replied. You guys help Yuzui. She hoped she wouldn't take too long. Once Nezuko found the box, she placed Tanjiro inside it as gently as possible. It'll be okay. We'll be okay, she whispered, gently placing a hand on Tanjiro's head before withdrawing her hand and closing the box. She tied up the broken shoulder strap before hoisting the box back onto her shoulders, stumbling as she stood up. She braced herself against the building, taking a few deep breaths. As she tried to catch her breath, she couldn't help but start to scold herself. She should have fought smarter, she should have been more aware of what she was doing before she nearly suffocated herself. Maybe then, she wouldn't be fighting with almost no stamina. Maybe then, Tanjiro wouldn't have had to jump in to protect her. Stop it. Nezuko slapped herself. She needed to get a grip, there was no time for her to be pitying herself for her mistakes. They had a fight to win. She looked down at her left hand, and tried to clench it into a fist. Nowhere near tight enough to properly hold her katana. "Dmn it," she hissed. She would need to tie her hand to the sword if she wanted to keep her grip. She opened Tanjiro's box, meeting her brother's drowsy and tearful eyes. Tanjiro tilted his head as Nezuko grabbed the spare roll of gauze and began wrapping it around her hand and the hilt of her sword. Once she was sure it was secure, she put the remaining bandages away. She gave Tanjiro a smile she really hoped was reassuring as she closed the door again, and ran back to the house. No matter what, she would see this battle to the end. "You really are impressive," the brother snarled as Tengen lowered his swords. "Tch. You think I'm impressive?" he asked with a scoff. "Then clearly you haven't seen much. You probably haven't even left your little corner of the country, if that's what you think. You have no idea how many lives have slipped through my fingers." Rengoku had always been better than him in that regard, able to save so many lives. Not to mention Himejima and Takedo, who had become Hashira in a mere 2 months. Or Kanroji, who ascended from civilian to Hashira in only a year, and had the strength to achieve so many great things. All of the Hashira had done amazing things. Then his mind drifted to his friend Tsuguko. The fiery teenager with a stubbornness rivaled by few. And she was proving to be a formidable slayer. A blend of her Hashira mentors, with her own feisty personality mixed in. Perhaps she could become a Hashira herself in the near future. In the meantime, however, Tinyan's priority was making sure all the kids got out of Yoshiwara alive. When Nezuko arrived, she noticed the building's lights had been extinguished. Several holes littered the walls, and the scent of gunpowder lingered faintly in the air. "I hope I'm not too late," Nezuko thought, leaping into the building and landing in front of Yuzui. Between him and a pair of demons. "I taught you well." Talk about a flashy entrance, the sound Hashira declared. Nezuko took a moment to look at the newcomer. Green-tipped hair, like upper six, with gray skin covered in black spots. He looked horribly malnourished, with his ribs in full view and the rest of his torso being unhealthily skinny. In each hand was a glowing red sickle. Then Nezuko saw his eyes. Yellow scara-surrounded eyes, the same shade of green as upper six, who was crouched on this new demon's back. But what was the most shocking was the rank engraved in his eyes. Upper six. How is that possible? Nezuko wondered, before doing a double take at the very alive demon she saw get decapitated several minutes ago. The female demon was alive. What the hell? "Oh, great," the new demon groaned. "More of you," he added while Nezuko straightened up. "You're DMN right," Yuzui replied. Nezuko turned to him, not missing the faint patches of purple on his skin. "And we're going to defeat the both of you." "In a flashy way, of course." Nezuko smirked and turned back to the two demons. "You heard him," she declared. "Don't be ridiculous," the female snapped. "You have no hope of winning. Not when your only hope is dying from poison." "Poison? Yuzui's been poisoned." Nezuko turned to the sound Hashira. The patches of purple on his face suddenly made a lot more sense. "Please. As if this poison is actually affecting me." Yuzui scoffed, but the statement still left a familiar knot in Nezuko's chest. And besides, I'm far from alone, he added, gesturing to the trio of teenagers. These three are my brilliant Tsuguko. Nezuko barely concealed her shock. Was Yuzui bluffing in the hopes he could intimidate the two demons? And I've figured out your weakness that will lead to your demise. Weakness? Nezuko wondered what he meant. All we have to do is decapitate you both. Simultaneously. Yuzui declared. The male demon smiled. You make it sound so easy, he laughed. But nobody's managed it. I've killed 15 Hashira, and my little sisters killed 7. This'll be easy. Sister. Nezuko thought, staring in shock at the two demons. Was that how the female survived being decapitated? If that was the case, some things definitely made sense. The sister had to be the defense and the one to do the hunting, killing weaker opponents and softening up the tougher ones. The brother, on the other hand, had to be the powerhouse. He would definitely be the most trouble. Which was saying something, given what the sister could do. I've had enough of this, the demon woman yelled as her OBs lashed out. Just die already. Before she could attack anyone, Zenitsu used his speed to get into the air with the female demon. Inosuke chased after him, leaving Nezuko and Yuzui with the male. Apologize to the girl whose ear you pulled. Zenitsu requested firmly, though Nezuko stayed focused on the new demon. She didn't pay attention to whatever spiel the female demon delivered, raising her sword. You couldn't be more wrong, the two demons said simultaneously. Nezuko jumped at that, tightening her grip on her sword as the male closed one of his eyes. What on earth? Nezuko thought. We live to exact our suffering upon the blessed. To take from them what was taken from us, the demon said, still speaking in unison. Don't you see? That's the way we've chosen to live our lives. There was a shift in the air, one that left that familiar chill in Nezuko's spine. We've slaughtered anyone who's ever crossed us. Anyone who's ever slighted us. We are going to slash through you gullets, like we did with all who came before you, they declared before several OBs slammed into the building. Nezuko didn't take her eyes off the demon as she dodged the attacks, waiting for him to so much as twitch. Dodge. With a pinch on the underside of her chin, Nezuko leapt backwards just as the sickle swung right for where her jaw had been. The male demon glared at her before he had to block an attack by Yuzui. Nezuko was quickly forced to dodge another barrage of OBs, and she tried her best to analyze the situation. There's two demons with the rank of upper 6. They're obviously connected as siblings. But how does that even work? She wondered as she deflected an obi that got a little too close for comfort. The girl uses her obi as a weapon, but could also capture a human. The man only seems to have powers related to offense so far. It must be some sort of system. Behind. Nezuko ducked under the blow, rolling away from the sickle demon. Well, you sure are slippery, the sickle demon laughed. Nezuko suppressed the urge to wince as the sound grated on her ears. I can see why my little sister struggled at least a little with you. But it won't matter. In the end, all of you are gonna die. Be careful. The sickles are poisonous. Yuzui informed her as he attacked the brother. It's not affecting me because of my training. But if it's so much as nicks you, you're dead. You couldn't have told me that when I showed up. Or when they mentioned you were poisoned. Nezuko thought as she deflected another blow aimed at her face. Even with such a big scar, it'd be pretty stupid to say you don't have a pretty face, the demon brother snarled. If you didn't have that scar, I'd say you're close to my sister's level for beauty. Is this guy complimenting me? Nezuko wondered incredulously as she ducked under another strike. The brother smiled, baring his sharp teeth. Of course, that just means I'm gonna enjoy ripping you to pieces even more, he cackled. Nezuko suppressed a wince, even as her ears ached. I think I'll just slice up that pretty little face of yours, and let the poison finish you off. Gotta cut me first. Nezuko snapped, deflecting a flying sickle. Duck. Nezuko followed the subconscious command as Yuzui's blade sailed over where her head had been. The brother easily deflected it, and then laughed. Them being your Tsuguko was a lie, he noted. At least those brats that are fighting my sister. You're all out of sync, he added, turning to Nezuko. But you're a confusing one, aren't you? You move in sync with his attacks, but it's almost like you don't expect them until the last second. Why is that, I wonder? Good luck guessing. Nezuko retorted, leaping away from another Obi attack. Come on, come on. Give me something. Anything. She thought, glaring at the brother. If we can't get close, we can't decapitate them. No wonder so many Hashira died. Nezuko shook her head. Now was not the time to be thinking of such things. Disrupt his attack flow. If you can do that, that might give Yuzui the opening he needs to finish him off. Then the sister shouldn't be too hard. Her entire body protested, but she forced herself to press on. She wasn't stopping. Not until these demons turned to ash. Before they knew it, the battle had moved outside, and the building had collapsed behind them. Nezuko didn't even get a chance to catch her breath before she had to dodge another flying sickle. Tengen watched the Kamado girl fight. It was impossible to miss the bloodstains across her body, she had been injured by the sister. And judging by her labored breaths, the sweat building on her face, and the sounds of exhaustion emanating from her in waves, she was low on stamina. Most likely she was running on fumes, only staying conscious out of sheer force of will. For crying out loud, her sword was literally tied to her hand. If the situation weren't so dire, he'd be impressed by such resolve. But her condition just signaled to Tengen that he had to end this fight soon. If he didn't, they'd be annihilated. Blood demon art, rotating circular slashes, the brother snarled, creating red blades and spinning them around his arms. Nezuko leaned back to try and delay getting cut, but ended up being tossed back by Yuzui. Damn it! Nezuko thought. She focused her instincts, trying to dodge the barrage of attacks. She also tried to find a spot where she could take a DMN minute to catch her breath, but any and all hiding spots were either too close or too far away to be worth risking either herself or the others' lives to get a chance at recuperating. Nezuko almost considered opening the box and letting Tanjiro loose, and she began reaching for the latch to open the door. Then she remembered what just happened moments ago. Her big brother losing himself, lunging for a human in his rage. The ferocity and anger that had left Nezuko scared of her own brother. Even if he managed to stay calm enough to only attack the two demons. She returned her hand to her sword. If Yuzui called for it, she would let Tanjiro join the fight. In the meantime, she would make do with what they had. Just as she settled on that decision, a familiar line formed in her vision. The thread had finally appeared. Nezuko felt a pull at the same time, and looked up. What on earth was the contraption being aimed at the brother? The woman holding it had to be one of Yuzui's wives, no one else in their right mind would approach the battlefield, right? The contraption fired, and Nezuko realized the ammunition was kunai. Blood demon art. Rampant arc rampage. A dome of red formed around the brother, deflecting the kunai. Nezuko grabbed one and sprinted. Yuzui had a few stabbing him in the face, but it clearly didn't affect him. Another landed in the brother's neck, and Nezuko stabbed the one in her grasp into his spine. It wasn't an easy target to miss, with how his skin stretched over the bones. Yuzui sliced off the brother's legs while Nezuko grabbed her sword properly again. Wait, his regeneration is slower. Nezuko realized. It seemed the brother had come to the same realization. Whatever caused it, Nezuko was ready to take full advantage, and leapt onto the nearby building. With another leap, she was close enough to decapitate the brother. They could win. Before she could even hit the neck, however, the brothers' legs regrew as he sent another barrage of sickles at them. Yuzui threw Nezuko back again. No. Where'd he go? Nezuko thought, searching for the now absent brother. I'll draw the Obi demon's attention, the woman on the roof spoke up as she tossed more kunai at the demonic Obi. Don't worry. Just focus on finding the other MMPH. Hinetsuru. Yuzui yelled as the brother grabbed the woman. The sister's Obi began circling him, trapping him while the brother glared at Hinetsuru. I have to do something. Nezuko thought. She took a breath, feeling her lungs seize from the mere attempt to use Hinakami Kagura. I don't have to use it in full. Nezuko reminded herself, thinking back to her fight against Kyogai. If she could mix her breaths again, she could get the power without the strain. Nezuko leapt into the air, her sword at the ready as she took a breath. Mix the forms to create one. The power of Hinakami Kagura, but easier on my body like flame breathing, and something in between with love breathing. She thought back to her spars with both the love and flame Hashira, the details of both fighting styles. Flame breathing, fourth form, blooming flame undulation. Love breathing, third form, cat love shower. And Hinakami Kagura, setting sun transformation. As she slashed at the brother, Nezuko grabbed Hinetsuru's arm and pulled her away. Her strike severed the brother's arms, and Nezuko quickly leapt to the edge of the roof with Hinetsuru in tow. Thank you. Hinetsuru gasped while Nezuko coughed from the strain. They had to end this fight soon, or she might pass out from the low stamina. And then she would just be a liability. Get going. It's not safe here. Nezuko whispered between her coughs and labored breaths, raising her sword again. This is working. I have enough power, but I won't strain myself. Nezuko lunged with another breath, aiming for the brother's neck. Behind him, Yuzui appeared. Kamado Nezuko, he called out as he raised his swords. You have my utmost gratitude, young lady. Rengoku taught you well, he declared, swinging for the brother's neck at the same time as Nezuko. Damn it. Why's the worm lady so hard to fight? Inosuke thought as he dodged another flying blood blade. How did these two demons fight so in sync? Inosuke turned to the praying mantis guy, and screamed when he saw Kamiko and the old man had their swords in his neck. They're gonna decapitate him, he yelled, turning to Manitsu. Seriously, how did he fight better asleep than when he was awake? What the hell kind of power was this? We can't keep dodging, if we want to decapitate them at the same time. Good luck with that. Worm Lady cackled as another one of her belly bands swung for Inosuke. I can see your movements are getting more and more sluggish. You're all losing stamina, and will be dead within the hour. I wonder which of you will be the first to fall. Inosuke. Chuitsu called out. We don't have to take their heads at the same moment. Just make sure they can't reattach one's head while we behead the other, he added before zapping around Worm Lady. Inosuke grunted in acknowledgement, deflecting another attack. TCH, the brother grinned, the two swords caught on his sickles. It's impressive, I'll give you that. Yuzui swung his other sword, but the brother turned his head all the way around and caught it in his teeth. As he bit down on the one sword, flesh began crawling across the swords in his neck. Not good. Nezuko thought, pulling on her sword. Amidst her tugging, her gaze drifted down. Well, I can try. She swung her leg in between the demon brothers, earning a growl in response. Well, she couldn't say she didn't try. More blood sickles materialized, spreading out to the demon slayers. Kamado, move. Yuzui yelled, grabbing the strap for Tanjiro's box and throwing Nezuko. To her surprise, Hinetsuru was also clinging to the box. The two landed on a roof much closer to the sister, where they caught the eye of Inosuke. Tsukiko, he called out. Inosuke. Nezuko replied. We have to hurry. Yuzui doesn't have much longer before that poison takes him out. We'll take out Worm Lady while the god of festivals deals with the praying mantis guy. Inosuke declared. Nezuko nodded, slicing an obi as it swung for her and Hinetsuru. Nezuko turned to the kunoichi with a worried look. Don't worry about me. I'll go hide. Hinetsuru told her before leaping off the roof. Once the older woman was out of sight, Nezuko turned to Inosuke. Alright, Inosuke. Listen up, she snapped. All ears, Kumiko. Inosuke replied. The sister's neck is bendy. It can't be cut by a single slice in one direction. Not without a speed none of us can reach. Nezuko told him, continuing to deflect attacks. Not without risking our own safety, anyways. She glared at the sister, trying to find a weak spot. The opening thread materialized, and Nezuko followed it. There, standing out against the demon woman's white skin, was a small patch of burned skin that still hadn't healed. There's a burn on her neck. Aim for that, it's probably weaker than the rest of the area you need to cut, she added. Thanks, Tanjirou. She thought before spotting the strange new splotch on the sister's forehead and what looked like a third eye in the middle. What the heck is that for? As always, his pink minion never failed to impress. The king of the mountain, Lord Inosuke, was just the slayer for this demon. And Pyanko had even noticed an extra weak spot on the worm lady's neck. This fight would be easy. Especially after all their training. After the demon train. You got it. Inosuke yelled. He could do this. He had Nariko and Manitsu guarding him, so he could launch a direct attack on the worm lady. He focused on her, and noticed something. The attack seemed to slow ever so slightly. As Inosuke prepared to attack, Nezuko turned to Zenitsu. We have to guard Inosuke so he can focus on attacking, she told him. Got it. Zenitsu replied. Inosuke took off, and Zenitsu and Nezuko launched themselves at the OBs. Beast breathing, 8th form, explosive boar rush. The OBs began swinging for Inosuke, getting blocked and cut by the other two. Flame breathing, 1st form. Thunder breathing, 1st form, thunderclap and flash. Unknowing fire. 6-fold. He's almost there. Nezuko grunted as she deflected another obi. Keep at it, she yelled, watching Inosuke swing his swords into the sister's neck. Then, with a yell, he began sawing at it. Perfect. Inosuke's jagged blades are perfect for that kind of motion. Nezuko thought. Beast breathing, 6th fong. Inosuke declared as he continued sawing, his swords cutting through and severing the sister's head. Palisade bite. He leapt up and caught the head, breaking into a sprint in the opposite direction of the battle. I got her head. I got her head. Inosuke declared. Great job. Now hurry and get as far away with it as you can. Nezuko replied. The further he kept that head from the battle, the less they had to worry about it getting reattached and undoing all of their progress. You two go help the old man. Inosuke told them. Let go of me, you hideous boar, the sister yelled while Nezuko whipped around and searched for Yuzui and the brother. Where had they gone? Come on, where Nezuko's thoughts cut off with a chill in her spine and a burn in her chest. What just happened? What was that? Am I passing out? Is an attack coming? Nezuko whirled around, turning to the cackling Inosuke. Turning to him just in time to watch a glowing sickle pierce his chest. Inosuke. No. Nezuko screamed, the world seeming to slow down as the brother grabbed his sister's head from Inosuke. Where did he get hit? The poison. What do I do? It's too dark, I can't see. The brother. Wasn't he fighting Yuzui? Nezuko looked around, trying to find Yuzui, and her eyes landed on a severed hand. Next to it laid Yuzui, his left wrist bleeding and the sound Hashira unmoving. Nezuko. Look out. Zenitsu yelled. Nezuko turned around just in time for him to push her shoulder and send her flying off the roof. A barrage of slashes landed right where she had been standing. Nezuko hadn't even gotten a warning. Or if she did, her shock left her numb to it. No. No, 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 no. Nezuko thought, her eyes burning as she fell. They were doing so well, they almost had it. How had it gone so wrong so quickly? I should have been paying more attention. If I'd been more focused, I would have noticed the attack sooner. I'm sorry, all of you. I'm so sorry. Nezuko hit the ground, and the world went dark. It's not your fault. Nezuko opened her eyes to the winter landscape of her home. Directly in front of her stood Tanjiro as his human self. It's not your fault, Nezuko. Why do you keep acting like it is? Tanjiro asked. Because I keep messing up, and it gets people hurt. Nezuko sighed, turning her gaze to her clenched fists. I need to be stronger, Tanjiro. I need to make sure you don't get stuck fighting my battles. I need to get strong enough so I can handle myself and not have to rely on others to save me from stupid mistakes. Says who? Tanjiro asked, bringing Nezuko's gaze back to his. Who says you have to do everything alone? Did Rengoku say that? Or your friends? Why do you think getting help is such a bad thing, he added, causing Nezuko to lower her head. Because, Nezuko trailed off, feeling the sting of unshed tears. You're human, Nezuko. Tanjiro told her. No matter how hard you try, you can't do everything. And I'm sorry that you feel like you have to, he added as he bowed his head. How can you say that? Nezuko demanded, feeling her hair fly loose from its bun. It's not your fault. Blaming you for how I feel would be like blaming Dad for getting his illness, or blaming you and him for us never having much money. Or you blaming yourself for needing help. Tanjiro replied as the tips of his hair began to brighten. You're not alone, Nezuko, so don't fight like you are. Haven't you already learned that? Let your friends help you. Let me help you. Tanjiro lifted his head, revealing his tear-filled eyes had become their demonic red. It's not your fault. The snowy landscape vanished, and Nezuko rolled onto her knees to take in the fiery scenery. The entertainment district was in shambles because of the 2 upper 6 demons. Where are those 2, anyways? Nezuko wondered before her vision was blocked by the sister. I'm surprised you're still alive, you ugly brat, she muttered. Nezuko dragged her sword so it was in front of her, not that it would do much with her painfully heavy limbs. Out of the corner of her eye, the brother watched the 2. Most likely waiting to step in if his sister needed backup. I need to figure something out. Nezuko thought as the sister shifted her gaze to Tanjiro's box. Tanjiro slept on the open door, clearly exhausted from the earlier fight. That little brat, the sister snarled. He was a troublesome thorn in my side. I'm surprised a demon who hasn't eaten any humans is able to compete with an upper-ranked demon. She turned back to Nezuko, leaning down so their noses almost touched. Who is that demon to you, HM? You're obviously important to him, or else he wouldn't have caused all that trouble over a demon slayer. Nezuko responded with silence, and the demon sister sneered before grabbing her ear and tugging. Tell me, you little brat. He's my brother. Nezuko yelped. The sister dropped Nezuko, letting the demon slayer drop in a graceless heap. Nezuko raised a hand to her ear, feeling the blood dripping from where it was nearly ripped off. That demon in the box. He's my older brother. Nezuko sighed. The demon sister was silent for a moment, then began giggling. Oh, it all makes sense now. A big brother protecting his little sister. No wonder he beat me up so badly, she exclaimed through her giggles. Looks like we have more in common than we thought. Really? You've been a pain in my backside all night, and you act like we're friends because we both have older brothers? Nezuko thought incredulously. What makes you think that? We're both little sisters trying our hardest, and we both have our big brothers that will destroy anyone who has wronged them or their sisters, the sister explained before gasping as her eyes widened like she had just been given some grand revelation. What if you became a demon, too? You could still have your big brother, but you'd be strong enough to properly handle yourself, too. And we could be such good friends, too. The four of us. What? Nezuko almost yelled the word aloud, but restrained herself. There was a tug in her mind, and Nezuko could see the faintest hint of an opening thread. She just needed to distract the sister. Well, what do you think? The sister asked with a terrifyingly excited grin. If you become a demon, my brother and I will let you and your brother go alive. But if you don't, I guess we'll have to kill you before we take your brother. And know that if we do, we'll make it slow and painful. As payback for what that little brat did to me. Nezuko flung a nearby rock at the demon, hitting the sister in her third eye and bolting with Tanjiro's box in her arms. She made sure to close the door so Tanjiro wouldn't fall out while she ran for the only thing that could give her any sort of chance at maybe getting out of the red light district alive without becoming a demon. Keep moving. Follow the thread. I just have to. Nezuko's thoughts came to a halt when the brother appeared beside her, kicking her through one of the burning buildings. Nezuko tumbled through the rubble. The rough landing sent Tanjiro's box flying. Nezuko scrambled to her feet, only for the brother to jump her and force her to the ground. Come on, there's no need to run, the brother snarled, his hand pressing down on Nezuko's head. Move. Swing your sword. Do something. If she didn't get free, her skull would be crushed. She turned her gaze to the brother, being met with a grin that nearly split his face. What do you think? He asked, turning towards his sister. Do we let her choose, or do we force it? Decisions, brother, the sister giggled. But I think we could be good friends. All she needs is to know just how much greater it would be if she were one of us. Force it is, then, the brother replied, letting go of his sickles. This is bad. Nezuko thought as she began thrashing, hoping to dislodge the brother. But he held firm, moving his hand from her head and seizing Nezuko's throat. Stop fighting, you're just gonna make this harder for yourself, the brother spat, biting into his wrist. Nezuko frantically looked around for something, anything, to get out of this, and her eyes landed on Tanjiro's box. Your pathetic brother can't help you. He's not even trying to protect you. Maybe he even wants you to become a demon. You're not alone, Nezuko, so don't fight like you are. Let your friends help you. Let me help you. Nezuko's free hand flew to the hand trying to strangle her, trying to pry the fingers off her neck. If she could just get some room to breathe. The brother let go, instead grabbing two of her fingers and squeezing until they cracked. Nezuko didn't try to hold back her pained scream. Hell, she might have even exaggerated it a little, even if her fingers did hurt like hell. Come on, now, the brother laughed. Surely, you're not that pathetic. Come on, Tanjiro. I'm counting on you. Nezuko silently pleaded as the brother lowered his wrist. The box opened. Then the brother was yelling, and his weight was lifted from Nezuko. She pushed herself up, finding Tanjiro standing between her and the upper 6 demons. The sister's eyes widened, and she inched behind her brother. What the hell? The brother growled, looking at his arm. The skin was burned, black flakes falling from the limb. He turned back to Tanjiro with a furious snarl. So you're the brat who burned my little sister? Yes. It's him. The traitor, the sister cried, clinging to her brother. Tanjiro's only response was a growl, remaining between Nezuko and the 2 demons. He turned briefly to her, and Nezuko got the message he was trying to convey. Don't lose yourself, she whispered as she got to her feet. Tanjiro nodded, and dropped into a fighting stance. The brother lunged, sickles at the ready. Look out for the fire, the sister screamed as Tanjiro headbutted the brother. Come on, the brother yelled. There's no need to fight like this. Just let your sister become a demon, and this can all be over now. Tanjiro responded by kicking the brother, throwing him back to his sister after. He turned to Nezuko, and she nodded. Well, if you're not gonna join us, the brother chuckled, his grip tightening on his sickles. I guess I'll just slaughter your pathetic little sister. I don't tend to care about other people's sisters, to be honest, but the idea of you two being demons alongside us made my sister happy. So I was ready to give it a shot. MMPH. Tanjiro threw a punch, his hand blazing. The brother cried out as Tanjiro attacked him, then lashed out with his sickle. The weapon pierced Tanjiro's chest. Nezuko forced back the urge to run in and help her brother, sprinting in the direction the thread was leading her in. You really think you can save her? You may have beaten my sister, but I've been protecting her for decades. You're nothing against me, the brother yelled as Nezuko ran. Duck. Nezuko did so, the familiar obi missing her head by mere centimeters. Just because our brothers are fighting, don't think I won't rip you to shreds, the sister declared. Nezuko grabbed a piece of rubble off the ground, trying to mask it as a stumble. Do you want to get lit on fire again? She demanded. Because that's how you get lit on fire. And I don't think Tanjiro is above finishing what he started. My brother can hold yours off easily. Especially since your brother has to pay for what he did to me, the demon sister replied. Nezuko rolled her eyes, throwing the chunk of rubble she'd grabbed with all her strength. It landed squarely in the middle of the demon's forehead. She shrieked, rubbing her forehead. It was blank now. Guess that new eye wasn't just decorative. Nezuko thought, resuming her mad sprint through the ruins of the entertainment district. Brother. She hit me, the sister wailed, dropping onto the roof of a nearby building. Nezuko searched frantically, spotting a shine in the rubble just as the brother arrived. She turned around, falling to the ground while the brother grinned. Your weakling of a brother is writhing in agony from the poison. He can't do anything to save you now, you little brat, he declared. I just have to distract him. That's all I need. Just a few more seconds. Nezuko threw a couple of the tiny satchels at the demon, scooting back until her hand finally wrapped around the handle of something. A kunai. She turned around, acting like she was reaching for another bag and getting yanked back by her Haori for her efforts. There's nothing a little weakling like you can do, the brother laughed. Nezuko rolled until she was on her front, bracing her arms under her body but not pushing herself up. Ah, have you given up? He guessed. Nezuko trailed off. She needed to do this right, or else it would all go downhill. She turned to face the brother. I've been preparing for this. She swung her leg, using her shoulder as an anchor to spin around on with her kick providing momentum. She felt her foot make contact with the brother, and she spun to get to her feet while Tanjiro attacked with his headbutt from behind. Guess he wasn't as incapacitated as the guy thought. Nezuko took the opportunity to stab the kunai into the brother's leg, letting him stumble to the ground as the wisteria poison coating the blade did its work. She raised her blade above her head, then swung down with all her might. What are you doing? The sister demanded, her obi lifting in preparation for the fight. Don't get decapitated by those brats. Nezuko quickly tuned her out. She had to focus, and decapitate the brother. A static sensation raced across her limbs as lightning crackled in the distance, and she tried to push her dulled blade even further into the brother's neck. Come on. Just a little more. Nezuko told herself. I got lucky. The realization struck her as she looked at the brother's enraged face. The upper 6 demons, they were what Nezuko and Tanjiro could have been. For only a brief moment, Nezuko saw her own older brother in this demon. I was lucky to remain human. If I became a demon, too, we would have turned out just like them. Nezuko thought, her eyes widening. If I ever become a demon, I have faith that a demon slayer will cut my head off. But I will never let that future come to pass. I will remain human, or die trying. She assured herself, trying to force her blade to go further into the demon brother's neck. Unfortunately, her blade was being pushed back by the brother's blood demon art. Nezuko leapt back so as to not get cut by the toxic blood, which allowed the brother to get up. You think you can decapitate me? Don't make me laugh, he roared, swinging one of the sickles for Nezuko's eye. However, when the weapon was a hair away from gouging it out, a new figure entered the fray. It was Yuzui, with one blade between his teeth and the other in his remaining hand. But he was alive, and that was what mattered. The brother jumped back, looking at the sound Hashira with shock written all over his face. Yuzui. Nezuko gasped. You've done well, you too. Yuzui breathed, turning to the siblings. Now, Kamado Nezuko. Let's end this fight on the flashiest note we can. He whipped around to the brother. My musical score technique will take us to victory, he declared, his voice cracking slightly as he lunged for the brother. The demon responded by unleashing more attacks. Yuzui blocked the strikes with ease, yelling a sequence of words as he struck back. Is he predicting the strike somehow? Nezuko wondered, watching Yuzui block more attacks before turning to Tanjiro. Stay back, okay? I don't want you to get caught in the crossfire, she told him before bolting after Yuzui. It was nearly impossible to keep up with the fight, the two combatants were moving so fast. Nezuko focused again, seeing the opening thread. She could have sworn the two combatants' bodies flickered for a moment, and the world seemed to slow at the same time, but everything went back to normal in the blink of an eye. Kamado. Now! Yuzui screamed. Nezuko leapt into the air as soon as he called her name. Yuzui's sword was already halfway through the neck. If she swung from the other side, they could end this. Even though he paved the way for you, you're still too slow, the brother snarled. Nezuko didn't have time to dodge before a sickle was in her mouth, entering on the underside of her jaw and coming out under her tongue. She could already feel the poison circulating through her system, eating away at her. Don't give up. I can't just use all the strength in my arms. Nezuko told herself as her heart raced in her chest, faster than it had ever gone before. From the crown of my head to the tips of my toes. I have to summon all the strength I have left. As she thought this, heat began to spread across her forehead, crawling past her right temple and down to her right cheekbone. Her entire body felt like it was on fire, but that spot on her head burned more than anywhere else. Unbeknownst to Nezuko, her scar had been replaced by a mark. A dark red, fire-like mark covered the right side of her forehead and shifted into a small vine once it passed her temple, with green tipping the red leaves. With a metallic ring, the upper 6 demon siblings were finally defeated. As the 2 heads went flying, Nezuko struggled to breathe. Her throat began closing up from the poison, and the blood from the wound in her jaw clogged her airway. Her increased heart rate must have sped up its progression through her body. She desperately gasped for any air she could get into her lungs as her vision began to blur. Kamado. Yuzui yelled, but his voice sounded so far away. It's not over. Not over. Did we not quite cut the heads off? Nezuko thought as the world tilted dangerously. Was she falling over? Was she losing consciousness? Was she already dying? Tanjiro watched his sister and the shiny man collapse. The scent of rot and decay clung to them both. He began running to them, noticing the sickle demon's body twitching. The shiny man noticed too, and he began screaming for Nezuko to run. No time. Tanjiro thought, leaping for the 2. He grabbed the shiny man by the collar of his clothes, then bolted for Nezuko. The other demon's body exploded, and a red substance that smelled too much like the scent that clung to his sister and the shiny man raced towards them. Demon, what's your plan? The shiny man asked. Tanjiro responded by wrapping one arm around Nezuko and the other around the shiny man's arm. As the bad red stuff came closer, Tanjiro activated his blood demon art. As his blood ignited, he looked around. He spotted the yellow boy and the boar a ways away. Protect them. All of them. Tanjiro focused, pushing himself as much as he could and feeling a few small sparks fly toward Nezuko's friends. He heard Nezuko's gasp for air, but focused on keeping up the impromptu barrier. He had to protect them. He had to keep them safe. I won't let anyone else die if I can help it. Nezuko opened her eyes to red light and a comforting warmth surrounding her. It was like a warm blanket on a winter night. She tilted her head up slightly to see the upper six brothers' blood demon art burning away in the red haze. Tanjiro was holding her, his face scrunched up from the effort he had to be putting into protecting her. Where's Yuzui? Nezuko wondered, then she saw who Tanjiro's other arm was holding. The sound Hashira watched in awe, and Nezuko slowly reached to grab Tanjiro's Haori. As the attack stopped, the fire extinguished, and Tanjiro collapsed. Wow! Yuzui muttered. Nice job, Tanjiro. Nezuko huffed with a smile, getting her brother's attention. Nezuko! Tanjiro exclaimed as he wrapped his arms around Nezuko, pulling himself up and resting his chin on top of her head. I'm okay, big brother. Nezuko chuckled, trying to catch her breath again. What little stamina and adrenaline she had left had begun to fade, and exhaustion began to settle in. What on earth just happened to us? Yuzui asked, turning to Tanjiro with an excited smile. The poison's gone. And I almost feel brand new. Missing arm and eye aside. Fire. Tanjiro replied drowsily. He had clearly exhausted himself, and was fighting his body's signals that he needed to start sleeping. Alright, how about you shrink down and grab a nap? Nezuko suggested, gently maneuvering Tanjiro so he was resting his head on her shoulder instead of her head. You've done a lot. I'll wake you up when we need you, she added. Tanjiro nodded sluggishly, going limp moments later. Once she knew her brother was sound asleep, Nezuko turned to Yuzui. What does he mean by fire? He inquired. Tanjiro's blood demon art burns demons and the products of their blood demon arts, but it doesn't affect humans. Nezuko answered. Or if it does, it's positive. Trust me, I've been on the receiving end of it before. It just feels comforting, she added, gently stroking Tanjiro's hair. Lord Tengen, three voices cried as the women who could only be Yuzui's three wives came running to them. Nezuko recognized Miss Hinetsuru, so she could assume the other two were Suma and Makio. The three women came to a halt when they spotted Nezuko and Tanjiro. Who are you? The red-clad woman with blonde bangs asked. Nezuko was about to answer when Miss Hinetsuru spoke up. Kamado Nezuko. She saved my life from the brother, she explained before turning to Tanjiro. Though, I'm not sure who the little one is. My brother, Tanjiro. Nezuko answered. He's a demon sanctioned by the MSTR. And a pretty flashy one, too. Yuzui added with a smirk much more reminiscent of his grins before he got poisoned. After today, Kamado Tanjiro has my utmost support. In fact, he's the reason his sister and I are okay now, he informed his wives, eliciting shocked gasps before the women knelt in front of the siblings. We don't want to disturb your brother, but please give him our thanks. Miss Hinetsuru whispered. Meanwhile, the blue-clad woman immediately clung to Nezuko and began wailing. Nezuko hoped her wince wasn't too obvious. Thank you so much. Both of you. I don't know what we would have done if we lost Lord Tengen or Hinetsuru, she cried, getting yanked away by the other woman seconds later. Suma, get a grip, the red-wearing woman, the one who could only be Makio, scolded the woman now confirmed to be Suma. Hinetsuru just said we didn't want to disturb the demon, and then you start wailing right next to him? Show some restraint, for crying out loud. Tanjiro slowly blinked his eyes open, then turned to the argument with half-lidded eyes. Tanjiro gave a tired hum, getting the three women's attention. Ack. We're sorry for waking you up. Suma yelped, getting whacked by Makio. Yes. Thank you for saving Lord Tengen and Hinetsuru. Makio grumbled as she wrestled Suma. Sorry about her, she's a mess on a good day, a complete wimp on a bad one. It's okay. I've worked with one of those people. Nezuko replied calmly before her attention was drawn to familiar screaming. Her friends were still alive. We need to find the others. Inosuke got stabbed by one of those sickles. We have to hurry, she said before standing up and running to where the screams had come from. As she got to her feet, Tanjiro shrank into his toddler form, having gone back to peacefully dozing. Nezuko ached all over, but she could withstand it. At the very least, until she knew Inosuke and Zenitsu were okay. If she used the right breathing technique, she could push herself until she did what she needed to do. Nezuko, the blonde cried out as Nezuko approached. She continued towards his voice, the act of keeping her feet under her taking up too much of her concentration to respond. Zenitsu. Nezuko gasped, finding Zenitsu trapped under some of the rubble. He had clearly been crying for a few minutes, if the tears tracks in his makeup was any indication, but the fact he was still alive was all that mattered. The demons are gone, right? I thought I heard their sounds change a while ago. Zenitsu said, wincing as he tried to wriggle out from under the rubble. I think my legs are broken. I'm dead weight. I'm sorry, Nezuko. It's okay. You're right, the demons are gone. The fight's over, I'm sure the Kikuchi will be here soon. Nezuko assured him, patting his shoulder. She fought the urge to sit or kneel beside him. If she did, she knew she wouldn't be able to get back up. Can you hear Inosuke? He was poisoned, we need to find him, and your hearing is our best shot. She would have asked Tanjiro to use his nose, but she wasn't sure if he memorized the scent she needed him to locate. It was a possibility, but Nezuko wasn't about to take that chance when Inosuke's life was on the line. Zenitsu cupped one hand to his ear, and Nezuko hoped that the boar-wearing boy was still alive. Over there. Zenitsu told her, pointing in the direction he must have heard a noise from. His heartbeat sounds fine, though. What? Nezuko gasped. She smiled to reassure him before she began running in the direction Zenitsu had indicated. She hurt so much, she could probably pass out from the pain at any moment, but she pressed on. They came up to Inosuke, and found him sprawled across the rubble. What the hell? Nezuko muttered, leaning on a piece of debris and running her hand along Inosuke's skin. The inflamed skin was gone. Hell, the hole in his chest seemed to have closed a little. When on earth did you manage to do this? Nezuko asked Tanjiro. Unsurprisingly, he remained silent, still sleeping. Ugh. I'm starving, get me something to eat. Inosuke snapped, acting as if there wasn't a hole in his chest. But that was better than him being dead. Inosuke. I'll buy you whatever you want after we all recover. Nezuko declared. She heard yelling in the distance, and turned to the sound. Just a little longer. She told herself, tying Tanjiro's Haori into a makeshift sling to make moving easier. She followed the noise, and found the demon siblings' bodies. Retrieving a bladed syringe, she threw one at the farther body, and leaned down to collect from the closest one. With a meow, Tamayo's cat appeared. Nezuko smiled, putting the blade she still held in the bag while the cat retrieved the other. Nezuko placed that one in its bag, as well, and the cat vanished. Your only redeeming quality is your strength. Nezuko turned to the voice, and spotted the upper 6 siblings a short distance away. They were screaming at each other, blaming the other for their failure and decapitation and hurling insults at each other. Nezuko crawled over the rubble, approaching the siblings as they continued their screaming match. Maybe if I didn't have to look after you all the time, I might have done something with my life. You should have never been. Nezuko placed her hand over the brother's mouth, silencing him before he said something he may regret. "That's enough, both of you," she sighed. "You're siblings, aren't you? Sure, you don't always get along, but do you really want your last moments together to be screaming at each other because neither of you want to take responsibility for your problems? You failed, and that's that. Stop trying to blame the other for it, it won't make you feel any better once you're both ashes." She never would have forgiven herself, if her last words to any of her family had been as venomous as those of the two upper six demons. "Shut up. Just shut up," the sister snapped, though tears began to spill from her eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about. Just buzz off. This is so stupid," she yelled. Then her angry yelling turned into mournful wailing. "I don't want to die. I'm not ready to die, yet. Please do something, brother. Help me, bro." Her desperate, terrified pleas for help were cut off as her mouth vanished. Nezuko lifted her hand from the brother's mouth. "Ume," he cried, sounding just as desperate as his little sister. "Ume?" Nezuko thought. She stared at the brother for a moment, then the realization dawned on her. Her name was Ume, she guessed in a whisper. The brother turned to her for only a second, but it was enough to know he heard her. Not much better than Daki. But at least Ume was her real name, he mumbled, his gaze drifting to Nezuko. "Why do you care?" "Just curious." Nezuko replied softly. "Hopefully, you and Ume will have it better in the next life. And you won't be brought down this path again." The brother stared at where his sister's head once lay until he crumbled to ashes, the last remnants of the two demons fading on the wind. "I wonder if they'll make up on the other side." Nezuko muttered, forcing herself back to her feet and making her way back to Inosuke. The second she got to him, she collapsed to her knees. The last thing she saw before slipping into the blissful embrace of unconsciousness was Tanjiro standing up and reaching for her and Inosuke. As they walked into hell, Jotaro turned back to the light. For a moment, he saw that demon slayer and her demon brother. He wanted to hate them. He wanted to be jealous that they got so many of the good things he and Ume were denied in life. But he also couldn't deny that he saw himself. And his own little sister in the two. A reflection. One cracked and warped by the cruelty of the world, but a reflection all the same. Maybe if things turned out different. "Jotaro?" He turned to Ume, noticing her gaze on the light as well. "Yeah, Ume?" he asked, hoisting his sister up. The flames were getting too close to her feet for his liking. Ume's gaze drifted to the ground. "Do you think, if all four of us get reborn as humans in our next lives, that we could be friends?" Ume inquired, turning to Jotaro. "I mean, they were our enemies, and the burns hurt, but I think we would have been good friends with them. If we met in a different way." Jotaro smiled, then chuckled. "You know what, Ume?" he replied, turning back to hell. "I think so. I really think so. Maybe we can find them. And then we'll all be friends in the next round." Ume lit up, and released a tearful giggle as they continued their trek into the fire. When the Kikushi arrived to the entertainment district, all three of the young slayers were unconscious. But the important thing was that they were alive. In the middle of the unconscious group sat Tanjiro, looking over the trio with worried, tired eyes. None of the Kikushi commented on how the demon fussed over the trio, seeming to cling to all three of them until the three slayers were sent to the butterfly mansion and he was coaxed into his box. They did it. They really defeated an Upper Kazuki. Kagaya gasped, barely able to believe what he was hearing. First Kyojiro surviving an encounter against Upper 3, and now Upper 6 had been killed at the hands of Tengen, Nezuko, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Tanjiro. And all of them had survived. "Thank you, all of you," Kagaya said before he went into a coughing fit. "Lord Kagaya!" Amain exclaimed, her gentle touch on his chest and shoulder while Kagaya coughed up more blood. 100 years. 100 years, and we're seeing a change at last. Kagaya told his wife. Then he smiled. This change, the death of Upper Six, was the first step to the final battle, he could feel it. The tides had finally begun to turn in their favor. He turned towards the wind, where he was certain a window was open to let in the moonlight. Kibutsuji Musen. We will see your defeat in this generation. And then the sole blemish on my clan will be wiped clean. Kagaya whispered. His time may be short, but he would ensure the Demon Slayer Corps would have at least a chance at victory. An upper Kazuki. Tamayo gasped, her eyes wide. How long had it been since an upper rank had died? At least a century, she was certain. Lady Tamayo. Yashiro spoke up. Tamayo turned to him, her eyes stinging. Are you alright? Yashiro exclaimed, practically teleporting to her side and kneeling in front of her. Who do I need to kill for making you cry? No one, Yashiro. Nobody. Tamayo assured him through her tears, smiling all the whole. We just came one massive step closer to defeating Kibutsuji. Both in the defeat of Upper Six, and the blood she suspected would be arriving soon with Shikamaru. I must make preparations. The three of us are about to make a great deal of progress in our work, she added, going about cleaning and setting up her and Lady Kochu's equipment. As she did, the demon woman smiled. For just a moment, she was back in that clearing. On that night. For the briefest moment, she saw a flash of red. She saw Kibutsuji at the mercy of him. And that pathetic coward she once referred to as her MSTR wouldn't get away from death again. As she finished preparations, Tamayo released a whisper of a chuckle. Oh, Kibutsuji, she sighed. Your time is starting to run out. If she were to say she wasn't excited to see Kibutsuji in hell, Tamayo knew she would be lying through her teeth. Mind explaining yourself, Yuzui? Tengen stared silently, refusing to break eye contact with Iguro. I was informed that you took Rengoku's 14-year-old Tsuguko to this place, and I came here to find the place leveled. For your sake, she'd better be alive. Iguro hissed, his eyes showing nothing but barely restrained homicidal fury. Yeah, she's still alive. Tengen replied, trying not to worry about what Iguro would do to him simply because he brought Kamado here. He barely restrained a shudder at what Iguro would do if Kamado had died. The serpent Hashira narrowed his eyes. If looks could kill, Tengen didn't doubt he would be dead 1,000 times over by now. And the reason you brought a 14-year-old girl to the entertainment district? Iguro asked. She volunteered for the mission. Tengen replied. I gave her and her friends the chance to back out, I assure you. It wasn't my intention for them to get dragged into this. Please don't be too harsh, Lord Iguro. Hinetsuru added. Lord Tengen was trying to rescue us. He didn't know it was Upper Six we were facing. Upper Six. Iguro replied, his eyes widening. Yep. And it's because of those kids that we defeated them. Tengen told him. Iguro glared at him again, making it clear to the sound Hashira that he was still very much in hot water with him. And probably Kanroji in the Rengoku family, too, if Iguro was this furious. How angry are Rengoku and Kanroji going to be? They're ready to rain utter hell on you. And Kochu isn't in any better of a mood. Ah. Tengen forgot Senjuro also worked under Kochu. He most likely told her about the attempted kidnapping, if the girls didn't spill first. Well, I think I'm well enough to recover at home. Tengen sighed, getting a warning glare from Iguro and the snake. No. You are going to the butterfly mansion, just like Nezuko and her friends are. Iguro spat. Tengen slumped slightly. This wasn't going to be an easy recovery, if Kochu alone was ticked with him. Never mind the 3 other Hashira he'd managed to anger. We'll help him there, Lord Iguro. Suma assured him with a nervous smile, the expression turning apologetic when her gaze turned to Tengen. Again, our apologies for our capture causing this mess. There's nothing to apologize for, ladies. Tengen told his wives. You all did quite the flashy job. Abanai watched Yuzui fuss over his wives, not taking his eyes off the sound Hashira for so much as a second. Gods knew the man had the speed to vanish in a blink, even in his current condition. Not that it would have stopped Abanai from hunting Yuzui down if the older Hashira did try to make a run for it. Just get him back to the butterfly mansion, then Kochu can deal with him for a bit. Abanai told himself. He would inevitably be visiting to oversee the recovery training, but Kochu would handle things first. Give the others time to blow off steam before someone tried to snap Yuzui in half on sight. Which was sorely tempting, given what they were told. I'm sorry, Yuzui did what? Kochu asked. Her smile gained a dangerous edge to it while her veins bulged, looking seconds away from popping. He tried to take Miss Aoi and Naho on a mission. By force. Senjiro replied, fidgeting with his medical uniform. Nezuko and her friends volunteered to go instead. And where is Yuzui taking them, that he was so desperate to kidnap two of my girls? Kochu pressed, looking about ready to deprive Yuzui of his GNTLS. Abanai, for one, didn't plan on stopping her. I think I heard Zenitsu say something about an entertainment district. Senjiro replied uncertainly, the response earning a horrified shriek from Mitsuri while Abanai, Shinjiro and Kyojiro all gaped and Kochu's eye began twitching. Nezuko is 14. Shinjiro said incredulously. A girl her age has no business being in that area without a debt, which she doesn't have. And he was going to take Aoi and Naho there. Kochu hissed, her smile dropping but her veins bulging even more. How had she not burst them yet? Why is he taking them there, of all places? Mitsuri demanded, her eyes wide with panic. Abanai reached out, squeezing her shoulder to try and calm her despite his own seething rage toward the sound Hashira. He said it was for a mission. And he needed female corps members. Senjiro answered. Doesn't he have 3 adult wives he could have sent instead of a trio of teenagers with a protective demon in a box? Abanai spat. Senjiro shrugged in response. I don't know why he didn't send his wives, he admitted solemnly. I might actually kill him. Abanai hissed. Everyone turned to him with shocked expressions. Maybe we shouldn't kill a fellow demon slayer. Mitsuri suggested with a strained smile and an uncertain shrug. It being against the rules and all. And killing him would be far too easy. Shinobu added, replacing her smile. We'll consider our options. I may end any chances of him reproducing if he pushes me. The second sentence was under the insect Hashira's breath, but Abanai was close enough to catch it. A good plan, in his opinion. Once we have a plan, we'll send someone to the entertainment district to either help with the mission, get Nezuko and her friends out of that place, drag Yuzui here by the ear, or any combination of the 3. In all honesty, Abanai had considered just killing Yuzui. Or at the very least, maiming him. If he staged it right and scared the Kikuchi into keeping quiet, it could look like Yuzui fell in battle. Hell, he could even make it embarrassing if he felt like it. But he would keep the idea in his head only. Demon slayers couldn't kill each other without good reason. And Yuzui bringing Nezuko here for a mission, despite the place and events, probably wouldn't be considered appropriate grounds for murder. Hey! I found them. They're over here, a Kikuchi yelled in the distance. Abanai didn't take his eyes off Yuzui. He did feel Kaburama's shift on his shoulders, though, toward the noise. They're all alive, that same Kikuchi declared a minute later. Count yourself lucky. Abanai hissed, turning to the trio of women fussing over Yuzui. The Kikuchi will help escort you to the butterfly mansion. Get there as fast as possible, he told them, getting 3 nods before he turned to the Kikuchi's voices. Time to see the damage, and determine how much trouble the sound Hashira was still in. Make way. Urgent medical care needed. At the calls of the Kikuchi, all 5 heads of the Butterfly Mansion medical team snapped to the direction of the voice. Kyo, Sumi, Naho. Get beds ready. Aoi told the girls, getting 3 nods before the girls sprinted off. Meanwhile, Senjiro and Aoi raced to meet the Kikuchi. What's going? Senjiro cut himself off with a horrified gasp. Nezuko and her friends were being carried in, all of them covered in blood. Inosuke had a hole in his chest. What happened? An upper rank, according to Lord Yuzui. Goto replied. He said there were 2 of them. It's a miracle these 3 are alive. Especially Lady Kamado and Mr. Hashibara. Mr. Inosuke's alive. Aoi shrieked, gesturing frantically to the boar-wearing boy. That hole is where his heart is. How is he alive after that? Not a clue. Goto sighed. But he has a hole in his chest that somehow didn't puncture his lungs or his heart. But it's still pretty bad. Lady Kamado isn't much better. Senjiro turned to Nezuko, taking in the injuries as Goto listed them. A deep gash on her chest, a hole in her chin, her middle and index fingers on her right hand broken, he could even see blood around her eyes and mouth. The blood around her mouth made sense, given the wound in her chin. But the blood around her eyes. Please don't let it be permanent damage. Senjiro pleaded. Blood around her eyes meant they'd been damaged, if he recalled correctly. It was entirely possible she burst the blood vessels, or they got gouged out. He just hoped it could be repaired. Or at least that she could adjust to the damage to her sight. Let's get Mr. Inosuke and Miss Nezuko set up, and then we'll check in Mr. Zenitsu. Aoi declared, ordering the Kikuchi around with a practiced ease despite her obvious tension. Senjiro helped where he could, seeking out Aoi once things were handled. In the mayhem, she had vanished once Inosuke and Nezuko were set up in private rooms. Aoi. Senjiro spoke up once he found Aoi, the older girl holding a scabbard in her room. It must have been her sword from her brief time as demon slayer. If only I wasn't such a coward, she whispered shakily, pressing the scabbard to her forehead. I could have helped. I'm such a coward. I'm so, Senjiro sat beside her, resting a hand between her shoulder blades. So helpful, even if you're not wielding a sword, he spoke up. Aoi turned to him, her blue eyes red and puffy from crying. You've done plenty as a medic, Aoi. It's not your fault that demons scare you. They're plenty scary, and I grew up learning to fight them, he told her. Aoi sniffled, wiping at her eyes. Nezuko always tells you how much help you are, right? Yeah. Aoi mumbled with a small smile. Well, she's right. You practically run this place single-handedly when Miss Shinobu is away. And that's while teaching 4 other people how to perform the proper medical procedures. Senjiro continued, trying to think of what Nezuko or Kyojuro would say. We help in our own way, even without swords. We're just as important as the ones doing the fighting. Aoi nodded with a smile. Right, she sighed. Thanks, Senjiro. I sometimes forget that. When you're surrounded by such amazing people that fight every day, it makes you feel small in comparison. Senjiro continued with a knowing smile. I know the feeling. My brothers are Hashira, so is one of my sisters, and the other sister is a user of the first breathing style to exist. I used to feel like I wasn't much in comparison. Especially since my sword never changed color. But I'm making my own contributions. And so are you. Aoi nodded, extending a hand to Senjiro. Come on. We have to double-check our patients, she chuckled. Senjiro accepted her hand, letting her pull him to his feet before they returned to the medical wing. Nezuko had fallen into a coma. Tanjiro wanted to be by her side and watch over her. Unfortunately, everyone kept saying they had to keep him out of the sun, so he was in his box until it set. He didn't know why. But everyone got scared when he was out too close to sunrise, so he guessed there was a reason. And it wasn't terrible. The butterfly woman, the one who constantly smelled of rage and grief behind a scent that made his nose itch and his head hurt with its intensity, had at least put his box beside Nezuko's bed, so he appreciated that. "Hi, Nezuko." Tanjiro perked up at the familiar voice. The yellow-haired boy, the one whose scent of peaches and a thunderstorm always had a strong addition of affection around Nezuko. Tanjiro really needed to remember the names of Nezuko's friends. He's been coming by really often. Tanjiro thought, pressing his ear to the wall of his box to better listen to the other boy. "I brought some flowers for you. I couldn't remember if there was anything specific you liked, so I just picked some pink ones. Because they made me think about your eyes. And your Haori. And your ribbon," the boy said. Tanjiro smiled behind the new muzzle. As unsure as he was about the fact his little sister had grown up so much so quickly and had a boy interested in her, the yellow-haired boy was nice. His scent was kind, underneath all the fear. There are worse people for her to be around. Tanjiro admitted to himself. The yellow boy cared about Nezuko, which was what mattered most. "I hope you wake up soon. We're all worried about you," the yellow boy sighed. "You got really beat up out there. I wish I could have done more to help." "You did lots. You killed that Obi demon while Nezuko and the shiny man killed the sickle demon." Tanjiro thought with a small smile. He saw what the yellow boy did. He saw the lightning dancing through the air, and wondered how the yellow boy didn't know what he did to help. "Stay strong, Nezuko," the yellow-haired boy muttered before his scent came closer. "Hey, Tanjiro. It's me. I hope you don't mind me visiting Nezuko and talking to her." "I don't mind." Tanjiro thought. "You're her friend. I'm glad she has someone to actually talk to." "You sound a little upset," the other boy told him. "I don't know what's wrong, but I'm sure it'll be okay." A light tap against the outside of the box. "Nezuko believes in you. So do I. Your sound is the kindest thing I've ever heard." Tanjiro scratched against the wood to indicate he heard Nezuko's yellow friend. A couple more taps on the outside, and Nezuko's friend left. "I'm happy you have such good friends, Nezuko." Tanjiro thought, curling up against the side of his box closest to Nezuko. He rested his head against the wood, his eyelids becoming heavy. He had been feeling so tired since that last fight. "Please don't sleep for too long." Tanjiro silently pleaded, pressing his hand into the wood as he began to nod off. "We're all waiting for you." With that last thought, Tanjiro finally let himself drift off. Kaneo walked into the infirmary to an unsurprising sight. As usual during the night, Tanjiro was curled up next to Nezuko. He was careful not to disturb the tubes injected into her arms, as always. The care with which he moved was impressive, to say the least. "She's recovering well." Kaneo spoke up, sitting across from the demon. Tanjiro turned to her, then returned his focus to Nezuko. He reached over and brushed some of Nezuko's loose hair out of her face. It was such a human gesture, Kaneo almost forgot she was looking at a demon. Almost. "Would you like to go out to the garden?" Kaneo offered. "You seemed to like it last time." Tanjiro was silent for a moment, then slowly got off the bed and took her hand. A faint warmth creeped up Kaneo's neck, but she ignored it as she led the way outside. Instead of wandering the garden, the two of them simply sat on the engawa. Kaneo, for one, wasn't going to complain. Tanjiro clearly preferred it tonight, she would respect his wishes. Kaneo directed her gaze upwards, trying to think of a good conversation topic. "The stars are appealing," she sighed with a small smile. She always enjoyed looking at simple things, like bubbles and the sky. She found beauty in their simplicity, and they didn't tend to overwhelm her vision. Out of the corner of her eye, Kaneo saw Tanjiro get to his feet, growing to his teen form and stepping further into the garden. Kaneo turned her full attention to him, curious as to what he was planning. She couldn't hold in a gasp when Tanjiro fell onto his back. "Oh, no." Kaneo whispered, standing up and running to Tanjiro. Did he faint? Could demons faint? Was this a thing Tanjiro did as the unusual demon he was? She knelt beside him, sighing in relief when she saw he was completely fine. He turned to her, his eyes telling Kaneo a lot. "Is something bothering you, Tanjiro?" she asked. Tanjiro turned away slightly. Kaneo shifted from kneeling to sitting, trying to think of what to do. What did her sisters do whenever any of the girls felt down, again? Warmth cocooning Kaneo, a soft voice telling her it would be okay. Sometimes there was a warm drink, or food. Kaneo couldn't cook. That much she knew, she tried. She'd likely end up burning the butterfly mansion down trying to boil water. Never mind the fact demons couldn't eat human food. But, she supposed, she could try and hold Tanjiro like Kane would hold her. It was worth a shot, right? Kaneo shuffled so she could pick up Tanjiro, hooking her arms under his and pulling him up until his head tapped her chin. Tanjiro turned to her with wide eyes while Kaneo wrapped her arms around him. "I'm trying to help," Kaneo told him. Tanjiro stared for another moment, his eyes beginning to water. Did I do it wrong? Maybe I should have done something different. Kaneo thought, moving to pull her arms away when Tanjiro leaned onto her. Now his head rested on her shoulder. She looked down, watching the demon as his tears began to fall. Kaneo couldn't think of what to do now. Tanjiro sniffled, and his arms wrapped around Kaneo. Tanjiro buried his face in Kaneo's cape, continuing to sniffle and starting to shake a little in her arms. Oh. He's crying. Kaneo realized, tightening her embrace. Why was he crying? Was it because he was scared for Nezuko? Shinobu and the others cried when Kane died. Because they really missed her. Is Tanjiro thinking of someone he misses, too? Kaneo asked herself, her hand unconsciously drifting to Tanjiro's head. Whatever you're going through, I hope I can help you through it. Kaneo whispered, patting Tanjiro's head while he continued to cry. Is everything alright out here? Kaneo jumped at the voice, turning to the woman beside her. Tamayo. The demon Shinobu was asked to work with. Kaneo nodded. I believe so, she replied, feeling Tanjiro's weight resting on her a little more. He had to be falling asleep, then. Tamayo smiled solemnly at Tanjiro, slowly reaching out and pushing some of his loose hair out of his face. Kaneo appreciated that the demon woman moved slowly. Kaneo knew Tamayo was trusted by the MSTR. However, even after spending weeks with Tamayo in the butterfly mansion, Kaneo's training left her occasionally wishing for her sword around the demon woman. He's such a sweet boy. Tamayo sighed, pulling Kaneo from her thoughts. He is. Kaneo agreed with a small smile, relaxing her hold and letting Tanjiro's head come to rest in the crook of her elbow. I was worried why he was crying, though, she admitted. Tamayo sighed again, her expression becoming grim. Hard to say, but I don't doubt it has something to do with the battle against Upper Six, the demon woman muttered. Kaneo nodded. Tanjiro had started acting strange since that mission. More. Kaneo couldn't describe it, but, almost like he was scared of something. Do you think he's worried about Nezuko? Kaneo asked hesitantly. We all are, but I definitely think Tanjiro is more worried than all of us. Tamayo answered. It's who he is. I've only witnessed his protective nature once, when I first met the siblings. But it was enough for me to know just how strong his love and loyalty for those he cares about really is. Kaneo hummed to acknowledge the statement. We'll take good care of Nezuko, Tanjiro. I'm sure she'll wake up soon. Kaneo silently reassured the sleeping boy in her arms, grabbing one of his hands with her unoccupied hand. She couldn't help thinking about how peaceful he seemed while he was sleeping. unbothered by the troubles of the waking world. After a moment, Tamayo tensed up, prompting Kaneo to look east. The sun is rising. Tamayo whispered, getting to her feet and practically vanishing in an instant. Kaneo turned back to Tanjiro. He hadn't moved like Tamayo had. Did he not sense the approach of daybreak like she did? Tanjiro, I need you to shrink, please, she whispered. Tanjiro's body shifted, going into toddler form. Perfect. Kaneo wrapped his Haori around him, circling her cloaked arms around him as an extra layer before returning to the medical ward. She got there and put Tanjiro in his box just in time for the sun to rise. That was close. Kaneo thought, heaving a sigh of relief. Still, it was always so strange that Tanjiro didn't seem to fear the sun. Kaneo found herself wondering why that instinct didn't seem to kick in until Tanjiro was already burned, according to Shinobu and Mr. Rengoku. Just what was this strange facet of Kamado Tanjiro's existence? Zenitsu sat quietly at the foot of Nezuko's bed, his focus entirely on the flowers in his hands. Is everything alright in here? Zenitsu turned to Miss Shinobu as she approached. I apologize if I startled you, Zenitsu. You didn't. I heard your heartbeat coming here. Zenitsu told her, turning back to weaving the latest flower crown. He tried not to think too much about Nezuko. However, he couldn't shut off his ears. Even if he could, he wouldn't want to. Despite her being comatose, hearing Nezuko's heartbeat was a small comfort. It assured him that she was alive. It also didn't hurt to hear Inosuke's for the same reason. It reminded Zenitsu that he wasn't the only one of his friends to survive the battle in the entertainment district. He could still see flashes of the end of it, as unclear as they were. Of Inosuke lunging towards him, covered in blood and his swords raised. Of the fire from Nezuko's Hinakami Kagura. And then there were the sounds. The erratic, fading heartbeats of Inosuke and Yuzui, then later Nezuko. Nezuko's heartbeat spiking for a moment. Tanjiro's sound becoming stronger for a moment, the sounds of determination and protectiveness clear as ever. How has she been? Miss Shinobu asked, stepping up to Nezuko. Her heartbeat's been steady. Zenitsu told the insect Hashira, grabbing another flower. He looked up, meeting dark purple eyes, and immediately redirected his gaze. Miss Shinobu scared him, it made it hard to make eye contact. Ah. I see where the flower crowns have been coming from, then, she chuckled, a song of amusement in her sound. Did you want me to stop? Zenitsu asked, fidgeting with one of the flowers. Miss Shinobu was a hard person to read, even with his hearing, and someone he didn't want to be on the bad side of. I know I've heard some doctors like it clean, but I guess the color helps the room feel more alive. It's all right. Miss Shinobu replied. Nezuko doesn't need any surgeries, so there's no need for sterility. And you're right. Brightening the room makes it feel at least a little more alive. Zenitsu smiled at that, tying up the flower chain. As Miss Shinobu left the room, Zenitsu stood up and went to the head of the bed. Here you go, Nezuko, he whispered, hanging the flower chain off the bedside lamp. He turned to Nezuko, sighing as he was reminded of just how badly she'd been hurt. Her fingers had been reset, and were in a splint to heal right. Bandages wrapped around her head, and Zenitsu knew he would find more wrapped around her torso. At least she didn't have a hole in her chest. Zenitsu grabbed the nearby stool, scooting it to Nezuko's bedside before sitting down and grabbing her hand. Please. Just keep breathing. Stay alive, that's all I'll ask. He silently pleaded, circling his thumb over her knuckles. Just pull through this. I know you're strong enough. He was certain that he imagined it, and that was why he didn't say anything, but a part of him thought he felt Nezuko's unbandaged fingers twitch in his hand. Tamayo peeked into Nezuko's room. The young slayer continued to sleep peacefully, Tanjiro curled up at her side. Tamayo focused on Tanjiro, spotting the shine of tears rimming his eyes. Tanjirou. Tamayo spoke up, getting the boy's attention. MMPH. Tanjiro sat up, wiping his eyes while Tamayo entered the room properly. Are you alright? Tamayo asked as she sat beside him. Tanjiro hugged his knees to his chest. He still looked like he was going to cry any second. Tamayo reached out, placing her hand on his back. Is something wrong? Tanjiro sniffled, wiping at his eyes again as he turned to Nezuko. Tamayo followed his gaze. I'm sure she'll be okay, she assured him. Tanjiro got up and crawled up to Nezuko, placing his hand on her cheek. Tamayo looked closer, spotting the scabs on her face. And based on the pattern and spacing, they could only have been inflicted by demons' claws. They won't leave scars, I'm sure, Tanjiro. You don't have to worry. MMPH. Tanjiro whipped around to her with wide eyes. Tamayo would admit she was confused, watching Tanjiro freak out. Then he looked at his hands. His eyes welled up again, and he clenched his hands into fists as he sat down again. Tamayo gently took one of his hands in hers. Tanjiro. Was it the demons you were fighting that gave Nezuko those scratches? She asked softly. Tanjiro tensed up, shaking his head slightly with wide eyes. He was scared to admit something. Whether it was long-buried maternal intuition or knowledge of body language that told her, it didn't matter. What did was that whatever it was causing distress to the demon, the child, in front of her. Tamayo wrapped her arm around Tanjiro, feeling him leaning against her and curling up in her hold. Tanjiro. He sobbed, though it was muffled by his muzzle, and buried his face in her shoulder as he continued crying. Tamayo reached up, placing her hand on his head. Tanjiro. Could you please look at me, she requested. Tanjiro leaned back, meeting her lilac eyes with his own red eyes rimmed with large tears. Tamayo unconsciously cupped his cheek, using her thumb to wipe away some of his tears. Did you give Nezuko those cuts? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tanjiro nodded, his tears still flowing freely. Did you mean to? Tanjiro's eyes widened at that. Then he began shaking his head, curling up and holding his head. Tamayo felt an ache in her heart. She knew the pain of hurting loved ones, especially unintentionally while in the foggy mindset of a hungry demon. She reached out, hugging Tanjiro close again. It's okay, she whispered, circling her hand on Tanjiro's back and letting him cry into her shoulder. You didn't mean it, and the injuries aren't severe. That's what matters. She'll be okay, she assured Tanjiro, tightening her embrace. You're a kind soul, Tanjiro. The fact you feel this way about unintended harm speaks volumes to your kind heart. Never lose that part of yourself, okay? Tanjiro replied as he leaned back. He wiped up his tears, though his eyes still had that shine as if he was going to cry more. Tamayo smiled solemnly, remembering that same look on her own children. Oh, how children so often wanted to look strong in front of those older than them. She brushed some of Tanjiro's hair aside, and he curled up against her. Tamayo responded with a gentle hug, a part of her wishing she'd never taken Muzan's offer. Then, at least, her own children could have grown up. Her husband would have watched over them after her death. Don't think like that. Tamayo scolded herself. If not for her becoming a demon, and later being freed, Kibutsuji very well may have caused even more harm. She had to remind herself of that. She couldn't let Yorichi's actions be in vain. Soft, deep breaths came from the demon in her arms, and Tamayo turned back to Tanjiro. He was peacefully asleep, now, resting in her embrace. Nostalgia pulled on her heartstrings, and she brushed his hair back again. Sleep well, Tanjiro, she whispered, easing Tanjiro back into his box and closing it before leaving the room. With one more glance to Nezuko, she closed the door. Lady Tamayo. She turned to the familiar voice of Yashiro, finding him standing a short distance away. "Are you all right?" he asked. Tamayo replied with a small smile. "Yes, I'm quite all right, Yashiro," she told him. "We should get back to work." With that, the two demons made their way to the lab. As they walked, Tamayo spotted the door to the Hashibara boys' room, slightly ajar. She peeked in, spotting Miss Kanzaki at Hashibara's bedside. The young girl seemed to be asleep. "Lady Tamayo." Tamayo turned to Yashiro. "Just a moment," she whispered, slipping into the room and approaching Miss Kanzaki. "Excuse me, Miss Kanzaki," she called out softly, watching the girl jump slightly. "My apologies, dear, I didn't mean to scare you." She watched the girl look around for a moment, then slumped slightly. "It's all right, Miss Tamayo. I needed it, anyways," she sighed. "It's not good for me to sleep in a chair, like this. Would you like Yashiro and I to take you to your room? It's not out of our way." Tamayo told her. Miss Kanzaki stared at her for a moment, then at Hashibara. I think I might spend the night here." "Just for tonight," she replied. Tamayo nodded, turning to Yashiro. "If you could get a spare futon, please," she requested quietly. Yashiro nodded, vanishing down the hall. "Oh, you don't have to do that, Miss Tamayo." Miss Kanzaki gasped. "I can get it myself," she added just as Yashiro returned. He tensed up, as if preparing to scold the poor girl, but Tamayo quelled the incoming rage with a hand on his shoulder. "It's all right, Miss Kanzaki," she assured her. "You're exhausted, anyways, so just focus on resting," she added, taking the futon from Yashiro and laying it out beside Hashibara's bed. Once it was in place, Miss Kanzaki seemed to make herself comfortable. "Thank you, Miss Tamayo," she sighed as she settled down. "And you can just call me Aoi," she added as Tamayo and Yashiro left the room. "Sleep well, Miss Aoi." Tamayo replied, closing the door and turning to Yashiro. Now, off to the lab. They still had a lot of work to do. But maybe later, she could help Tanjiro heal from the pain he was in. If only a little. And perhaps she should spend more time with Kochu's girls, if they so wished. "How is she?" Senjiro turned to the door, meeting 4 pairs of eyes. His father stood behind Kyojiro, whose ramrod straight stance seemed just a little slumped. Abanai stood by Mitsuri, whose free hand fidgeted with her haori. Her other hand was in Abanai's. Mitsuri looked ready to cry. "Anything?" Father asked, his face pinched with worry. All of their expressions were worried, really. "Not yet." Senjiro sighed as he refilled the IVs. Tanjiro's been using his blood demon art, trying to speed up the healing process. But it's still taking time, and Nezuko isn't showing any clear signs she's going to wake up yet. Mitsuri teared up at that, Abanai's hand moving from her hand to her shoulder. "I hope she'll wake up soon," the love Hashira whispered, placing her hand atop the serpent Hashira's with a solemn smile. "She will." Kyojiro replied. "Of that, I am certain. Nezuko is many things, and one of them is strong-willed. It may take time, but she will make her way back to us." "He's right." Senjiro piped up. "It may take a while, but she'll wake up eventually. In the meantime, visitors are welcome." "Thank you, Senjiro." Mitsuri replied, her smile brightening slightly as she and Abanai walked to Nezuko's bedside. Senjiro turned to Kyojiro and their father, gesturing for them to come in. They did so, placing themselves across from Mitsuri and Abanai. Senjiro decided not to comment when Yuzui walked past the door looking like death was looming over him, and made his way back to his family. "It's weird seeing her like this." Father sighed. "Never seen her this quiet." "It's certainly strange." Abanai agreed. Kaburamaru slithered around his shoulders, the white snake reaching down and flicking his tongue against Nezuko's cheek. He lowered his head when Nezuko didn't respond, as if disappointed he couldn't wake her up. "It's all right, Kaburamaru," Abanai assured the snake, tapping his head. "Your effort is appreciated." "Yeah." Mitsuri giggled, running her hand along Kaburamaru's scales. The five of them stayed in that room well into the night, during which Tanjiro joined them. Mitsuri held the demon Kamado as they all exchanged stories about whatever they could think of. Tanjiro tried to join in on the storytelling, but no one could make sense of his charades and sound effects. He seemed okay with receiving head pats for his efforts, though. It was nice. At least Senjiro thought so. Even with Nezuko comatose in the center of the circle, it was nice to just hang out. To have his family in one room, and just talk and be casual. To see everyone smiling and laughing. And when Nezuko woke up, Senjiro looked forward to more of these little gatherings and stories. And he looked forward to hearing what stories Tanjiro had, when he was human again. As everyone set up futons to spend the night, Senjiro smiled. "Yeah. This was nice. What brings you here, Yuzui?" Rengoku asked, standing resolute in the gate to his family's estate. Tengen unconsciously prodded at the remains of his wrist. He had to do this. Even if he never repaired his friendship with Rengoku, it was for the best he at least tried to bridge the gap his last mission had put between himself and the flame Hashira. "I wanted to apologize." Tengen answered. "May I come in?" Rengoku stared at him for a moment, the flame Hashira's gaze piercing, then he opened the gate properly. "I will hear you out. And if the apology is genuine, I may be convinced to accept it," he said, crossing his arms. "But know that I will not be as quick to forgive." "I understand." Even if she volunteered, Kamado is your Tsuguko. "I should have let you know about the mission." Tengen sighed. It was hard to brush off Rengoku's words. Coming from such a close friend, his words stung just as much as his recent cold shoulder did. "I won't blame you if you never forgive me, or never want to see my face again after this. I just figured I'd get this off my chest." "Thank you for understanding, Yuzui," Rengoku replied. Tengen nodded, then lowered himself to his knees before bowing until his head touched the ground. "You have my sincerest apologies, Rengoku. What I did was underhanded, and I deserved and will deserve every reprimand since that mission. If not for her brother, Yotsuguko, and one of her friends would have been killed on my watch. That is a fact I will never forget. And I swear I will do whatever I can to make it up to you. Even if it's by leaving this place and never showing my face again." Tengen told the flame Hashira. Rengoku was silent, but Tengen could hear the contemplation. At least he was thinking about the apology. "I believe that's the first time I've heard you leave a mention of flashiness or flamboyance out of a conversation." Rengoku chuckled. After a moment. "Your feelings must be very genuine to go that far. While it will take time for me to forgive you and properly rebuild my trust in you, I accept your apology." Tengen sighed in relief. He hadn't completely screwed over his friendship, thank the gods. "But I can tell something else is on your mind. You know me too well, Rengoku." Tengen replied as he got back to his feet. "It's actually about the demon Kamado kid," he added, looking around cautiously. He didn't hear anyone else nearby, meaning Shinjiro was probably out, but he didn't want to risk it. The MSTR had said there was no reason for action at the moment, but it was best this stayed quiet. "Did something happen?" Rengoku asked, his posture tensing. "Technically, yes." Tengen replied. Rengoku did his own scan of the area, leading Tengen inside after. Once the door was closed, Rengoku turned to Tengen. "What happened?" Rengoku asked, concern ringing through his normal sound. Tengen knew what he was asking under the guise of a general question. "Did the demon Kamado harm a human?" "Nothing that requires any lives to end, I promise." Yotsuguko saw to that. Tengen assured him. "But, he has an advanced form." Tanjiro awakened in advanced form? Rengoku asked, his eyes wide. When? How? Have you already reported this to the MSTR? The MSTR knows. It would have been stupid of me to leave it out of the debrief. Tengen replied. As for when? It was sometime in the early battle. I wasn't there when it first happened, so I don't know the specifics. Kamado mentioned something about doing something stupid, and her brother showing up to help. He has always been protective of her. Rengoku sighed. But in advanced form. I didn't expect he would grow powerful enough to attain one. I didn't believe he could. Not without the kind of power that could cost him what's left of his humanity. Well, it clearly took enough out of him to make him hungry for human flesh. Tengen admitted. When I showed up, he was being held back by his sister's scabbard. He was going feral. And what he did to the other demon, Tengen shook his head. If the kid hadn't gone berserk, Tengen wondered if the demon sibling could have finished off both of the upper 6 demons on his own. I heard Kamado saying something. I think it was a lullaby. Then the demon was crying. He could still hear the sounds under the wailing. The grief, the guilt, the self-loathing. It was only because of his training and experience that he didn't want to break down himself from the sheer amount of agony the kid was in. He's a good kid, Rengoku. It's just, how to describe it. His love and loyalty for those he cares about is immense. Rengoku said. Especially when Nezuko is involved. He has repeatedly put himself in danger to protect her. A part of me wonders if it's just his nature, or if it's an ingrained instinct from losing their family. What do you mean? Tengen asked. Sure, he knew the basic gist of Kamado's story, but he'd never heard the full thing. Tanjiro and Nezuko had 4 younger siblings and their mother, all killed when Kibutsuji attacked and turned Tanjiro into a demon. Rengoku answered. And the father? Was the man not around? And if so, why? Passed away before the attack. You will have to ask Nezuko, if you wish for more details. It's not my story to tell, and I do not wish to push any boundaries while she's unable to voice them. All I will say is that Tanjiro always took his role as the eldest son quite seriously. Rengoku replied with a faint smile. Tengen almost cracked one of his own. No wonder Rengoku took a liking to the kid. Kindred spirits, they were. I won't keep you any further. Thank you for coming to speak with me, Yuzui. Thanks for hearing me out. Tengen chuckled. You should come by and visit us sometime, now that I'm in retirement. My wives would love to see you. It's been a while since you saw each other last. Rengoku laughed in response. I will see what I can do. I may have to pay your estate a visit, he replied. Tengen nodded with a smile, moving to leave. And Yuzui? Yeah. Tengen turned back to Rengoku. As much as I didn't approve of that mission, you have my thanks. For protecting Nezuko to the best of your abilities, the flame Hashira told him. Tengen nodded in response. I'll have to give my own thanks to her when she wakes up, he replied before leaving the Rengoku estate. He had a few more apologies to deliver. Yuzui. Shinobu said as she entered Nezuko's room, finding the newly retired Sound Hashira sitting on a stool at the foot of the girl's bed. She honestly thought she'd scared him off after his recovery training. I won't be long, Kochu. Yuzui replied. Shinobu tilted her head. And the reason you're here, she asked, walking past him to check on Nezuko. I hope it's not to kidnap my girls again. It's not, he told her. I'm sorry about that, by the way. It's no excuse, but I was worried about my wives, and didn't think it through, he added, keeping his head bowed. Shinobu hummed in acknowledgement, keeping her focus on her patient. The apology is appreciated, but I can't forgive you. Not right now, she replied. And it may take me a long time to forgive you. You also owe an apology to Aoi and Naho. I'll make sure to give them that. Yuzui assured her. Shinobu nodded, stepping back from Nezuko. She spotted the latest flower crown, and smiled at the colorful blossoms. I figured I'd come and check on her. It's the least I can do, given it was my problems that got her in this condition. We're back. The two Hashira turned to the voice, finding Yuzui's wives in the doorway. Hello, Lady Kochu. I hope we're not intruding. Hinetsuru said with a bow. Of course not. Shinobu replied with one of her more real smiles. How are you three doing? We were told you went through quite the ordeal. We're fine. Nothing more than some bruises and scratches. Makio answered. Yeah. Suma giggled before turning to Nezuko. Is she doing any better? Much better than she was. Shinobu assured the three women. Rest assured, Nezuko will wake up. That's good to hear. Makio sighed. Yes. We were starting to worry. Hinetsuru agreed. Especially after all the help she and her friends were in the entertainment district. We would have lost without their help. That's the truth. Yuzui chuckled as he got to his feet. Come on, you three. We should probably head home, he said. His wives nodded, but Hinetsuru walked up to Shinobu and held out a small bracelet made from familiar crystal beads. Please give this to Nezuko when she wakes up. As a token of our gratitude. Hinetsuru told her. Of course. Shinobu nodded, taking the accessory and leading the Yuzuis to the front gate. Now, my door is still open to all four of you, should the need arise. Whether it be phantom pains, or other injuries that need a medical professional, don't hesitate to make your way over, she told them. Once they were gone, Shinobu turned back to the butterfly mansion. She had to check on Inosuke. He should be waking up soon. Mitsuri, there's a letter for you. Mitsuri raised her head from where she had been resting it on Abanai's shoulder, turning to Koyomi as she approached them. There's one for Abanai, too. Koyomi added, the younger Kanroji's sister holding out 2 envelopes. Mitsuri took one, and Kaburamaru grabbed the other. Mitsuri smiled as she watched Koyomi tap Kaburamaru's head once he passed the letter to Abanai. Thank you, Koyomi. Mitsuri replied. Her little sister nodded, leaving in search of their parents and brothers. The love Hashira examined the kanji on the envelope, recognizing the handwriting. Yuzui wrote us letters. Abanai muttered. Seems like it. Mitsuri replied, opening the letter. I wonder what it's about, she added softly as she began reading. Kanroji. I should probably have come to say this in person, and I'm sorry for not doing that. But maybe you wanted some space, after everything that happened 2 months ago. I hope you'll be willing to read this letter, regardless. It seems at least a bit important. Mitsuri told her boyfriend. Abanai raised a brow, slowly opening his own letter while Mitsuri returned her focus to hers. I'm sending this as a formal apology. Kamado is severely injured and comatose because I took her on that mission. It doesn't matter that she volunteered, I should have taken better care of her and her friends. So you, Iguro, Kochu, and the Rengoku family have my sincerest apologies. I'll do what I can to make it up to you all. If you've gotten this far, then I appreciate you taking the time. I'm not expecting a reply, but you know where to find me. Our door is always open. Until our next meeting. Yuzui Tengen. Mitsuri hummed as she finished reading the letter. We may have to talk to Yuzui, she admitted. I already tore into him, and I'm not ready to speak to him right now. Abanai muttered as he finished his letter. Maybe after Nezuko wakes up, he added, getting a knowing smirk from Mitsuri. You seem to accept her a lot more now, she whispered. Abanai glanced at her, then at the floor. Well, you've called her your sister, and Kyojuru and Senjuro do the same. I guess it's just something that rubbed off on me. Abanai replied. Mitsuri smiled, gently placing her hand on her boyfriend's shoulder, her fingers just brushing his hair. "May I?" she asked. She could see the smile, despite the bandages covering Abanai's face, and began combing her fingers through his hair. "I'm happy you two get along. I'm just happy to have you, and a real family," Abanai told her, leaning onto her shoulder. She smiled softly at the sight of the serpent Hashira so relaxed. It used to be such an unusual sight. But now she saw it nearly every day, and she was grateful to be among the select few to do so. As Tanjiro finished putting away the laundry, he heard Goto yelling down the hall. "Kiyo! Sumi! Naho! Aoi! Tanjiro!" Nezuko's woken up from her coma. Tanjiro was glad he put the laundry away already, or he might have dropped it in his shock. "She's awake." After 2 months, Nezuko was conscious again.